Good evening, everyone. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and welcome to the February 11th, 2025 meeting of the Goffstown Zoning Board of Adjustment. The Goffstown Zoning Board is an elected board of 5 members and up to 5 alternates appointed by the Zoning Board. Currently, the board has 4 elected members, 1 alternate, and hopefully 1 alternate in the wings. If anyone is interested in serving on the ZBA, please contact the Planning and Zoning Office at Town Hall for more information. The board has a posted agenda for each meeting and intends to follow the items in order. The board will open the public hearing on an application to receive testimony from applicants, abutters, and affected parties, and ask questions about the appeal. The public hearing will then be closed, and the board will enter into a deliberative session to discuss the merits of the appeal. For each application, the board will decide to approve with conditions, deny, or continue the public hearing to a later date. You're welcome to watch the deliberations this evening, or you can call the zoning department at 603-497-8990 to get the results tomorrow morning. For an applicant's request to be approved, there must be an affirmative vote of at least 3 members. An applicant can request a continuance if there is not a full 5-member board to act on an application. Just for information this evening, we have 4 elected board members here. We have Bruce Buttrick, who is an alternate, who is in by conference phone. We will be doing all of our votes tonight by roll call, just for your information. And an applicant can request a continuance if there's not a full 5-member board for an application. If you are aggrieved by a decision made by the ZBA tonight, you have the right to appeal to the Superior Court or to the New Hampshire Housing Appeals Board. However, before appealing, you must request a rehearing with this board to preserve your right to appeal. Rehearing request must be filed within 30 days of the decision and state all reasons why the decision was unlawful or unreasonable. Failure to request a rehearing may forfeit your ability to appeal. I'm going to ask the board members to introduce themselves. I'd ask to start with Bruce on the phone, and please identify whether anyone else is in the room with you, Bruce.
Bruce Buttrick here. I'm remote. There's no one else in the room with me.
All right, Jack, you're up.
Jack Shepard, Building Inspector, Code Enforcement Officer in Zoning.
John Belleville, member.
Denise Langley, Vice Chair.
Leonard Stewart, Chairman.
Jason Cody, member.
All right. Yeah, Bruce, I'm going to designate you this evening to be a voting member on all applications.
So noted.
Thank you.
I motion to look at the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes as
All right. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of January 7th as submitted. I'll go around by roll call. Bruce?
To approve.
The minutes. Just to repeat it, to approve the minutes of January 7th as written. It's been made and
Affirmative
seconded.
from Bruce.
Okay. John?
Approve.
Denise?
Approve.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
All right, unanimously approved. I'm going to change the order of the agenda a bit tonight. We have one item that we need to dispose of very quickly. There'll be the third item on the printed agenda, the Dubay Group, regarding the subdivision. Let me read it, and we'll take care of that quickly. The Dubay Group applicant and Allard Revocable Trust, care of Karen Allard trustee owners, are seeking a variance to subdivide a property for purposes of a residential use, single-family homes within the industrial zone, which is not permitted per section 3.1.1, table of principal uses of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. The property is located off Riverview Park Road, map 3, lot 64. It's zoned industrial. The property is located on the Manchester town line, and the proposed access to the subdivision will be from Phillip Street and Joseph Street Extension, which are streets located within the city of Manchester. I know that we have no one appearing for the applicant. I will entertain a motion for regional
I
impact.
motion is regional impact.
I'll second.
All right, we're voting now on regional impact. Made and seconded. Bruce, your vote?
Yes, it is affirmative for a regional, development of regional impact.
John, please?
Affirmative.
Denise?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Jason, yes.
Is this for Mountain Road?
Yeah.
Not yet.
But it
I'm
will
sorry?
be. You can come
It
in.
will be, but not yet.
Oh, we're waiting out here?
You don't have to.
I can't hear you, there's a whole bunch of noise.
You can come in and sit
Okay, thank you.
quietly. Unlike the people in the hall.
Sorry.
Okay, we have a 5-0 vote on regional impact. The city of Manchester will be notified officially of this. There will be a full public hearing on this application at the board's next meeting on March 4th. And that is it on this for this evening.
They don't have to go through the city.
Well, the city will be notified and we'll wait.
Manchester didn't have the 14 days of notification.
So we'll be notifying the city of Manchester and waiting for their response. But we'll be
Okay.
holding a public hearing on March the 4th on that application. All right. Moving now to the next application, that will be Charles Farley and Megan and Richard Thompson, owner applicants, are seeking a variance to allow for a detached accessory dwelling unit to be built on the lot that has a 3-bedroom, single-family home currently under construction. The variance is required per sections 5.2 and 5.2.2 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance, as the accessory dwelling unit will be not attached to the single-family home. The property is located at 46 Sari Drive, map 4, lot 25-4, and it's zoned conservation and open space. Motion for regional impact?
Our motion is no regional impact.
I'll second.
On. Gotta remember the roll call on everything. Bruce, motion on regional impact on the Farley and Thompson application.
I'm not sure, did our staff report indicate that it was?
No, I'm saying there's no regional impact.
Motion to determine that there is no regional impact. which is a recommendation of staff.
Bruce said no, there is none, there is no impact.
No regional impact.
No regional impact?
No regional,
No regional impact.
and I vote no regional impact. All right. Back again, folks.
All right. Hey,
Proceed this time, please.
all right, thanks. We did have one question. We heard it when we were here, and then we read the minutes, and it was something about the secondary structure being 400 feet from the main house, and we're trying to figure out what's the origin of that, or where did that come from?
I am not having the minutes in front of me. I am not, or what do we have for the, how far is the accessory structure from the main dwelling?
80 feet.
That's what I thought.
Well, if that was from me, that was either I misread or misspoke on
All right,
that.
well, for sure, if this was in front of me and I was on the board and it was 400 feet apart, I'd have sent me to the planning board as well. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot closer. So, you know, ADUs are permitted in the ordinance, and granting a variance for a detached unit, we don't think that that would be contrary to public interest, as it's not detrimental to public safety, to convenience, to comfort, to aesthetics, prosperity, health, or the general welfare of other inhabitants of the town. It doesn't impose a nuisance. It's not an undue concentration of population. It doesn't impose on the privacy of others, and it doesn't impose an undue burden on public services. In fact, an 800 square foot detached ADU will not affect the community of Goffstown any more than an attached ADU. With respect to the spirit of the ordinance, our ordinance exists for many reasons. In a large part, the spirit of the ordinance is to protect the rural character of the town, and I'm not asking for 800 square feet to live in with my family. I am asking for that, to be as close as possible. We need enough room for the fire trucks to turn around. And that's why I'm suspecting it needs to be about 80 feet. I just haven't had it engineered yet. And it's really not an impact to the community if I live 10 feet or 100 feet from Richard and Megan. You pointed us to the planning board for a site plan, and I don't know a lot about this, but I know a site plan involves engineering, road improvements, declarations, bylaws, budgets, minutes, meetings, insurance, and of course, you know, I'm gonna have to, lawyers will be involved, and I'm gonna become a developer, which is not really what I had in mind. And if I have to go to the planning board, I really almost have no choice but, you know, to, well, maximize the density to cover some of the costs that I'm gonna have to do this. I don't think anyone wants more density than necessary in our town or in anyone's neighborhood. The idea of a subdivision kind of seems contrary to the rural character of the town. I think my neighbors, fellow citizens would agree and object to any form of subdivision or condo development that wasn't necessary, and a variance for a detached ADU is more in keeping with the spirit of our ordinance than a site plan. We believe that a variance is, as we understand it, is permission granting us the right to use a property in a more flexible manner than allowed by the ordinance. In our case, the ordinance is unduly restrictive because our site will not accommodate an attached ADU right now. Granting the variance to allow our ADU to be detached would do substantial justice because it would allow us to have an ADU, which is what the ordinance intends. A variance to allow our ADU to be detached at the end of a 1,600-foot driveway that can't be seen from the road or by any of our butters is not an encroachment of incompatible uses, as even a detached ADU is still for residential occupancy and will not have a detrimental effect on anyone else's property. With respect to a special condition or the hardship, when we were clearing the lot for Richard and Megan's home, we found what we thought was, a good spot for their home. It was a knoll on the side of the slope. As we get into it, we discovered the origin of the knoll is, it's ledge. And it was really not far below the surface, a foot or two, and it was tough enough to have survived the last ice age. And we put a 65,000-pound excavator on it with a 12 or 14 foot high hammer. It was a 10,500-pound hammer, and it was too time consuming to be effective. We had to blast their cellar hole in. And there's a picture of what came out. Do you guys have a picture of, should all have a picture of this? To give you a sense for the scale, did you see Richard? Can you see him in the picture?
I didn't see him when I first.
Oh, he's in there.
No, I said I didn't see him when I first looked at it. Oh, yeah, I see him.
I think you get a pretty good idea how much rock came out of that hole. It's, the whole mountain is one gigantic rock. And I can't blast or hammer against that house and with any hope that I wouldn't damage it. And it's too risky, it's unreasonable, and it's a hardship. The burden of requiring us to attach an ADU outweighs any gain to the general public. My intent is to build a detached ADU as close to their structure as the site conditions will allow, and still provide the turnaround area needed for the fire department. And the private nature of the property makes an ADU a reasonable use. And we look forward to your favorable consideration on the matter.
I have a question. Do you have a geotechnical report on that site?
What is a geotechnical report?
It would be a professional geotech looking at the soils and the ledge, checking the location of where you want to put it, what the soils are there, what the soils are around where you've already blasted. I would assume you blasted a little bit larger than the footprint of the house.
Well, on one end, it was within a foot, and the other end was probably 2 or 3 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty tight. I think you can look at it and know that it's rock, and I would definitely have to hammer in some of the foundation for the ADU. It is what it is.
Did you consider possibly putting the ADU on a slab next to the main building?
It's hard to do at this point. I mean, not just from an engineering standpoint, but if I do that, then, I'm still going to be inside of 800 feet. It's going to be a goofy footprint. It's a floor plan. It'll be an antiquated floor plan. Like, the only way to do it would be to enter in through their bathroom. It's not reasonable for them.
Any other board members?
The septic system shared with the main house?
I don't know if you can get it there, John. I mean, it's possible. I haven't had it engineered. The challenge is either I need to add an extra bedroom of capacity onto their system, and I can only go in one direction with that, and it has to be north, and that ends up that has its own slope issues, and or I'd have to probably be detached. I mean, I think detached is the most effective way to do it. It's not impossible to connect it to theirs, but I'd still have to blast or hammer a trench in that's gonna be 150 feet.
So I think the question and the problem that we have, it is very clear that ADU units have to be attached. And we just double checked, it was in 2024, that it was brought up again to do detached. And the town people voted it down. Now, I'm not sitting here to explain why. All I know is they just voted this down in 2024 to not allow detached. And when we do allow attached, they have to have, and I'm gonna, well, when we allow an attached, they have to have a passage door to the main house. And there's a reason for that. Because we don't want a duplex, because that's a whole different type of zoning. And, you know, and there's a minimal size. And what you're asking us to do is completely disregard. It's a very black and white zoning ordinance, which a lot of them are not. This has come up to us many times. The hardship, I think you could attach it to the house. Unfortunately, I don't have a plan on the house to see what it looks like. I know blasting, it's not fun, but it's the world we live in New England. It can be done.
I can't blast up against their house, not for all of the effort that we put into all of that. I won't.
But you have space, you said there was one, I mean, you know, I'm not, a slab, I mean, you know, what you're asking for, we're trying to find a solution, and detached is just, it comes here and leaves quite a bit, quite often not being approved.
It has been approved before, though?
Years ago it was, and it was an existing building that was already on site.
Mr. Chair, this is Bruce.
Yes, Bruce,
Can I comment?
go ahead.
I would have to agree with Denise. Detached ADUs are not permitted in our zoning ordinance. By definition in the glossary page, Roman numeral 6, and section 5.2, all of our ADU criteria has to be attached. However, this request is technically for an additional single-family dwelling unit. And that's where the variance should be from that section, which is 3.7.2, to request an additional dwelling unit on a single lot. And then to go down that path would be what was previously stated, that it has to be as if it was an open space development. And I can expound on that a little bit, but I just wanted to bring this point up. I don't think we should be asking for a variance for ADU. We're asking for a variance to permit an additional dwelling unit on the same lot.
Jack?
I disagree. This is Jack. And the way 3.72 reads. And I went over this with Derek, and I went over this with planning department. And this is what we came up with, was the accessory dwelling unit, the 5.2. Because that's primarily what it's being used for. If it did go the other way, we'd have to go for a site plan. And it's not going for site plan for subdivision, it's going for an accessory dwelling unit.
Again, this is Bruce, not to have a debate, but this is not an accessory dwelling unit by definition. It's not attached. The town's zoning ordinance doesn't permit detached ADUs. So this request is technically for an additional dwelling unit. And that provision is not for a site plan. They can get a variance for that plan or that path and ask for a variance to the section that sends them to the open space requirements. And I think they could satisfy the open space requirements because their site is set up for open space development, which would be to, quote, cluster the homes or the structures together, which is part of an open space development. So you have one driveway serving two or more structures. Satisfies the intent of the open space development criteria. But that's my opinion.
Bruce, we were directed from staff that to take this case here as a variance for a detached ADU unit. That was pretty much the instructions we got. Jack, do you
Yes.
agree with this?
I agree with this.
Bruce, this is Charlie. The
Go ahead.
ZBA exists for this purpose. Like, what are we all here for if we're not looking for an exception to the ordinance? And the ZBA has granted variances for detached ADUs in the past. So why is it not appropriate for the ZBA to function this way today when it has in the past?
I can't speak for the past. I'm just saying that from the semantics of the zoning ordinance as it's written, the ZBA is bound by the written zoning ordinance. And the process to grant a variance of any section in the zoning ordinance is valid, and we are acting on that. But if we're being misapplied to act on accessory dwelling unit, or I should say a detached accessory dwelling unit, that doesn't exist. What exists is to ask, you're asking for an additional dwelling unit on the lot.
But he's following the size as an ADU unit.
But I think what we're, perhaps Bruce, and tell me if I'm incorrect, what you're saying is here, it would be possible to grant a variance from 3.7.2, the open space development requirement, to grant a variance waiving that section of it to
Yeah.
allow an additional single-family dwelling on a second lot.
Correct. Correct.
So it's
Yeah,
really a
I
matter,
agree.
I guess, of what section of the ordinance we're applying here.
And I would say that that comes right out of the intent of the Conservation Open Space District, which is 2.3.1. That's to allow for compatible, very low density, which they're asking to do under open space. I agree. If this was to be under the open space, the buildings would be closely clustered, as this is being proposed, maintaining low density for the district of CO. And I wouldn't be hesitant to grant a variance to that section. I'm having heartache of granting a variance to a section that doesn't apply accessory dwelling unit. This is an additional dwelling unit.
Understood. Let me ask Mr. Farley before we, and I don't want to get into deliberating on the merits of it here. Is there anything you would like to add to your presentation?
Only that we're here applying for a variance for a detached unit. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for you to hear and approve or deny as we move through this process.
Understood. All right, if you have,
One other question. Was last month our first meeting, or is this our first meeting?
this is your first meeting
Okay.
on this application.
Okay.
So if you have nothing, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this. Seeing none, if you have anything in closing, I'll just ask you if you step back and we'll close the public hearing and deliberate. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the board its pleasure.
My concern is I don't have enough information to verify that they cannot put the ADU unit attached to the existing house. It may not be an ideal situation that they want to live in, but it is going by our variance codes. And without seeing the building and making that decision with the ledge and the location of where a ADU unit could actually connect to the existing dwelling, I can't personally grant a variance for detached.
John, any thoughts?
It's pretty cut and dry the way we have it written up on the ADU. But like Denise was just saying, not seeing the layout of the existing building to rule that out does leave a gray area for me also.
Jason?
Well, I think when I was looking at this originally, I was thinking the whole attached versus detached, and I saw the information from the zoning office, and it was like, oh, okay. But now that Bruce explained to me, or explained, I think, better, I think I see the logic, right? So if this was R1, this would be a different discussion. It's not. It's actually zone CO. So the variance would technically be to put a ADU where there isn't one allowed. But he's right. ADU in our thing is defined as attached. The state of New Hampshire does not define that, because I went to the state zoning rules and looked. And they don't, it's not defined in the state that it's detached or not. It's up to the municipalities as to whether that they allow it, and we don't. So I think I'm back to what Bruce was saying, is that we're trying to variance the wrong thing, because I think the logic makes sense. So I'm with Bruce on this one.
And I will just add, and I think it's very possible, if this came back with a request for a variance under the second single-family dwelling on a lot, I would be inclined, more inclined for a variance from the open space development portions of that to grant it. Because again, it's one of those things, the town has been very clear, and we understand there are plenty of towns around New Hampshire that have much more permissive zoning ordinances than Goffstown does, but we are charged with enforcing the law as written and the law as voted by the townspeople. I share some of Denise's reservations about needing more information, but I also think it would be more appropriate, you know, if the request were amended to a second principal use on the lot, then there's a much better argument for it under that section than strictly as an ADU. Wouldn't change the plans, wouldn't change the situation, but would get it under the right section of our zoning ordinance to interpret. Those are my misgivings. Bruce, anything further?
I concur with what the board is kind of tossing around as well. I think the applicant should be arguing for a variance to allow a second dwelling unit as if it was in an open space development, which they do fit that criteria, but not having to go through the planning board at that process of developing roads. I think it would pass, for me, better than having to grant a variance for a detached ADU, which the ordinance doesn't allow.
Can you tell me where that is that you're looking at, please, again? What was the number? The code, the variance?
Well, 3.7.2.
I would have them re-argue for 3.7.2 to get a variance from that section, and also the accompanying reference of 13.5, which says it goes to the planning board for open space. I think we just make it that it would duplicate and satisfy the open space criteria, which we know it would. It's got the 20-acre minimum, blah, 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 but I think it satisfies that additional single-family dwelling unit on one lot. But we variance the requirement of going to the planning board and go through an open space process.
So, I think there's another thing that I'll bring up. I'm not sure who would want to think about it, but the town election is next month. No, but not before the next meeting.
No, and there's no, in the zoning amendments, there is no changes in ADU.
No, but there may be a changing in the board, the makeup of the board. So,
That being said, I don't think we can consider that
Can't consider
as
that.
a
Yeah,
factor,
no.
as a factor in this decision.
oh, no. I mean, I think that the thing that I thought I had remembered that we could grant a different type of variance, but that doesn't apply either, so. Yeah, if we have to vote specifically on what's being presented in front of us.
That's what we have.
Then I don't see an alternative choice.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Bruce.
I guess what I would make a suggestion, maybe I'll make it as a motion, but I think the board should deny this request the variance for an additional detached ADU, or the ADU. But then we have to renotice and ask them to do a new variance for the section 3.7.2 and the accompanying 13.5, and ask for a variance from those.
It's not on our purview.
At a
If
new
we
notice
deny,
hearing.
that's not up to us.
I think since the applicants are here and hearing this discussion, I don't think that's a suggestion that we can make as a board, but I think the applicants hear the discussion and know what they would have to do. I think that, from what I hear from the members of the board, I don't think anyone is adamantly opposed to this project, but I think we need to put it under the right section of the zoning ordinance to be able to grant the variance. So, yeah, again, I don't think we can specifically suggest, but I think the applicant hears us loud and clear on this. Anything further from members of the board on this discussion?
Not either.
I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one. Bruce, Denise?
I'll motion to deny the variance. We'll go through the criteria. As far as being not contrary to the public interest, Town of Goffstown's voters have voted loud and clear that they do not want a detached ADU unit. The spirit of the ordinance is not observed for the same reason. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. I understand the location that you want to put your place, but I don't think it's an actual hardship. I think it can be done. It might cost a little bit more money, it may take a little bit more time, but being able to attach the ADU unit is not an impossible feat. Surrounding properties, they would not be diminished. And I already talked about the hardship.
All right, is there a second?
Well, second.
Okay, I would too.
All right. Any further discussion? Let's go around for roll call vote again. Bruce, yay or nay?
Vote to deny.
John?
Nay.
Denise?
Nay.
Jason?
I vote yes to deny the motion.
Okay, and I vote yes to deny. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming in. I think we'll probably be seeing you again, sir.
Hope so.
Let me give my throat a momentary break.
I'll be recusing myself in this.
All right. Bruce, for the record, Denise has left the table. She is recusing herself because she is a party to this application. So with that, let's get into the next item on the agenda, which, if my throat will stop giving out on me, is from, and if I slaughter it, pardon me, R.J. Belia Properties LLC applicant and the Masonic Building Association owner are seeking 5 variances and a special exception to allow for an 1,800 square foot addition to the existing Masonic Temple building and convert the use from a nonprofit place of gathering to a multifamily residential use that will become a 12-unit multifamily apartment building. The variances that are required are from sections 4.4.3.2, 4.3, 7.3.6, 7.6.3, and 13.3, 13.3.5, and 13.3.5.1 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. The first variance is for relief from the minimum size of the units, as the proposed units will be less than 800 square feet. The second variance request is to allow for 12 dwelling units, whereas section 4.3 allows only 2. The third variance request is to allow for parking within the front yard setback, which is prohibited. The fourth variance request is to allow, lost my place here, allow for a smaller loading area than allowed. The zoning ordinance requires a loading area of 1,000 square feet and width of 14 feet, whereas the proposed width is 8 feet. The fifth variance request is to allow for alteration of the surface configuration and add drainage structures to be located within the inner 50 feet of the 100-foot wetland surface water conservation district buffer, whereas it is not permitted. The applicant owners are also seeking a special exception per section 3.7.4 to allow for the multifamily use within the residential 1 district. The property is located at 15 Mountain Road, map 29, lot 36, zoned residential 1, and and Wetland Surface Water Conservation Overlay District. I'll entertain a motion for regional impact, please.
I will motion no regional impact.
Second.
Let's start with Bruce. Motion for no regional impact is made and seconded. Your vote, Bruce?
I would agree there's no regional impact.
John?
No regional impact.
Jason?
Yes, no regional impact.
And I vote no regional impact. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Well, greetings to the Honorable Board. My name's Christopher Drescher. I'm counsel for the applicant here. With me is...
I'm Jeff Merritt. I'm an engineer with Granite Engineering. We're the civil site engineers for the project.
And,
Raymond Belia, owner of R.L. Belia Properties.
all right, so we're all here. I'll give it to Jeff first to give you an
Yeah.
overview, and then we can walk through however the Honorable Board would like to go through these.
All right.
Very good. I'm going to point to the plan. You guys have this stuff in your packets, but maybe follow along on the screen here or on the board here. But what we have for the board this evening is a project that involves property at 15 Mountain Road. I suspect everybody knows where this is. I see some nodding heads.
Most of us are quite familiar
Very
with
familiar
it.
with it, probably. I'll go through the property as it exists today, and then I'll flip to what our proposal is and tell you about that. We're right on the corner of Mountain Road and Knollcrest Road. We did a property survey of the parcel. That's in your plan set. That's one of the first sheets on the plan there. This is a 3/4 acre parcel. It's just under 3/4, 0.74 acres in land area. We're located in the R1 zoning district. As you know, the lot's developed. The records would indicate this was developed in 1970. There's a single structure out there, kind of on the center of the lot there, and you know, it has good presence on Mountain Road of the building that's out there. It's a nice brick building. There is frontage on, of course, Mountain Road and then Knollcrest Road. Access to the property is off of both roads. So there's a driveway off of Mountain Road right here, and then there's an access off of Knollcrest as well. The driveway off of Knollcrest is giant. It's a 200-foot wide curb cut. It basically spans the entire distance, or nearly the entire distance of the frontage along that roadway there. Certainly non-conforming, but that's how it was done back in 1970. In terms of paving out there, to the south of the property, south of the building, to the east of the building, and then the north of the building, there's asphalt out there. That is parking areas to support the use in the temple. Most notable, I should point out the parking off of Knollcrest. This is a situation where you nose in towards the building, which then requires you to back out into Knollcrest to get out. It's a very unconventional parking arrangement in today's land planning that we do. We wouldn't necessarily propose that. And you'll see as I get to what we want to do here, we're going to clean up some of these non-conformities, at least that's the proposal. The other unique thing about the property here, in addition to having two roadway frontages, our south property line is actually the center line of a brook. That is Whittle Brook out there. So that's our south property line, is the center line of that. And then there's a 100-foot surface water buffer from that brook. And on the plan here, you can see two green lines. The outermost green line, or the northern green line, that's the 100-foot projection of that brook. So that tells you where the buffer kind of projects into the site. The 100-foot buffer basically splits the building, and then maybe roughly half the impervious area on site is within that 100-foot buffer to the brook. As the board knows, you know, the inner 50-foot buffer is the section that requires a variance to do any sort of work in there, whereas the section between 50 and 100 feet is something that the planning board has jurisdiction over. So we added this other green line on here, and that represents the first 50 feet. So the building's not in the first 50, but certainly the access up a mountain road, and a lot of the parking is in that 50-foot, first 50 feet of the buffer. So in terms of stormwater controls, you know, it's not going to be a big surprise to the board. This is a site that was developed 55 years ago. Stormwater standards essentially didn't exist back then. So this property slopes from north to south, and it basically sheet flows into the brook untreated, uncontrolled. It's done that for many, many decades. Again, it's something that we're looking to fix as part of this project, but that's how the site runs today. So there's a lot of nonconformities as the parcel sits today. The next sheet that we provided was a site plan showing what the proposal is. Let me flip to that. The proposed project is to convert the use of the building to a multifamily residential use. This type of use is allowed in the R1 district by way of a special exception. That's one of the requests that we have here to the board. We would salvage the existing building. I mentioned that it's in good shape. It can be reutilized. It doesn't have to be torn down and wasted, so the applicant would reuse the building. The building that exists there today is large enough to fit 8 units that we're proposing. And then on my plan, to the east of the building, you see this blue area here? That's a small addition that we're proposing. The floor area, the footprint of that building is roughly 1,900 square feet. Not large, but it would house another 4 units. So 4 in the blue and then 8 in the existing for a total of 12 units on the property. And again, that's a variance that, Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned in your introduction there that we're seeking is a density variance to have 12 units out here on the property. In terms of the unit sizes, that's another variance that we're requesting. The units that we're proposing within the building they range. The smallest unit is 480 square feet, and then it goes up to 600 square feet. So these are smaller than what the current ordinance allows. 800 square feet is the threshold that the ordinance allows right now. We're seeking a variance from that to have the smaller units. This type of unit is really geared towards, a young professional, someone that's single and living on their own. It's a different type of housing stock that would attract a different type of person. It would also attract, it would also generate a different price point, I guess, than a 800 square foot unit. So we think there's a demand for it in the town here, and the applicant would like to propose that. In terms of access to the property, the driveway off of Mountain Road would remain. That's largely untouched. The big changes are related to Knollcrest and that giant 200-foot curb cut that exists today. We would get rid of that. We would define a formal driveway here on Knollcrest, right opposite Suduka Lane, so we'd line up that intersection there. We would change the circulation so that you enter off of Mountain Road, park, and then if you were to leave, you would go out onto Knollcrest. So it would be one-way circulation through there. The curb cut and the parking that backs out into Knollcrest, we would eliminate that. We would redefine Knollcrest so there's actually a street there and not just an expanse of pavement. So we have a 24-foot width proposed out through there. And then the parking would be realigned along our reconfigured parking lot or driveway here. So we show 24 parking spaces on the property here. That's enough for this use. That's actually more than enough for this use. It meets code, and it's more than we actually think we need, but it meets code. The reconfiguration of the site as we're proposing it actually results in a net decrease in impervious coverage because of the reconfiguration of the parking lot here and the loss of all the pavement out in this area on the north side of the existing building. In addition to that, because we can redefine the pavement width and the roadway width within Knollcrest Road, we actually reduce the impervious coverage within the town's right-of-way as well. So this is a net decrease in lot coverage out there, which is good for the overall area and the expected discharge off the property. I mentioned a lot of the parking today being in through this area here and obviously over here in Knollcrest. All of that parking today, or a good portion of that parking today, is within the front yard setback. That's how it exists today. Our projects greatly reduces that. We have a little bit of parking that would remain in the front yard setback, but significantly less than what exists today. This area over here, again, existing, that's in the front yard setback, but we make a substantial improvement towards making that better. And then on the south side of the building, this hatched area is a proposed loading space. The way the ordinance reads, you need 1,000 square feet and a 14-foot width for a loading space. That's kind of a one-size-fits-all loading space, whether it's commercial, industrial, residential, doesn't matter. That's the size of a loading space. So for this type of use, we're not expecting tractor-trailer trucks. This is a residential use. The types of vehicles that would come here would be, you know, your delivery vehicles, the postal service, FedEx truck maybe, Amazon for sure, you know, that kind of vehicle. So we have a defined loading space here of 8 feet wide, that's about 360 square feet. Smaller than what the ordinance requires, but it's suitable and sized appropriately for this type of use. So we're asking the board to consider that variance for a loading space that's based on the use as opposed to kind of the universal loading space of the ordinance. The edge of pavement that exists today and that shows up on this plan, we're holding that. So we're not going closer to the brook. That's important to let the board know. We're not looking to move the project any closer to Whittle Brook than how it is today. We are proposing to make a bunch of stormwater improvements, and that's why we're seeking a variance for work within the 50 feet, the first 50-foot buffer. Again, if you go out there in a rainstorm today, you know, all the water sheet flows off and it runs from a direction north to south directly into the brook. We're proposing to change that. We have an opportunity here to redirect stormwater to a stormwater best management practice within the buffer. We have to do it in the buffer because that's the low spot on the site. Obviously, we can't do it on the high spot because we can't get the water to go up there. So it has to be on the low spot. We do have a net decrease in impervious surface, so we know the runoff from the project's actually going to be less than it is today. But what we're trying to achieve here is we're trying to achieve a treatment mechanism where none exists today. So we know we're going to decrease the peak rate of runoff, but we're trying to treat the stormwater prior to it entering the brook or the groundwater. And so we think we can do that in this area should the board give us the variance to work in that area. We did meet with the Conservation Commission to run this by them. I think you'll find in your staff reports that there's a recommendation from them. They were quite supportive of the proposal to reduce the coverage both in Knollcrest and on site, and then to build in a stormwater treatment facility where none exists today. So that's the project. It represents a lot of improvement to the property, we think, and a good adaptive reuse of a building that's been underutilized. Attorney Drescher is going to take back over and run through the variance criteria and special exception criteria, but I'll certainly be happy to answer questions afterwards.
Thank you.
Do you have any plans of what the living space is going to? I'm
We have a
still
floor
trying-
plan for you, I think.
Yeah, we have a floor plan. That should be in the packet too.
I did not have that in mind.
I can show you it here. And this is, you know, they haven't drawn in everything, but it shows the layout of how it would work. And 6 units each floor basically, and then the square footage of the various units. Here's, you know, here's the smallest one at 480, and then the largest one at just over 600 square feet. Yeah, thanks. Yep.
One other question on that. Are you talking about with the changes that you're making, would you maintain the principal ingress, egress from the Mountain Road side, or where would the building be accessed from? Is that going to be off the,
So what you would do, if you lived here, you would access the property from the Mountain Road entrance. You would park, and then there are egress points here and here, and then that leads to a hallway in the center here, and then, actually there's an elevator inside as well.
okay, so the current principal entrance off Mountain Road would be,
So it remains, but it would likely be, I guess, less utilized than the side entrances because they're closer to the parking. But that predominant street frontage that you see from Mountain Road, that's proposed to
what
remain.
I think most people think of as the front of
Yes.
the building essentially.
Yeah. Right.
So, Mr. Chair, how would you like me to do this? Do you want me to go
Well,
through each
what
one?
What I think, and what has been suggested to me, I believe that the special exception for 12 units within the R1 area is kind of the threshold issue here, because if you don't have that, all of your other variances, are kind of moots. Oh, I'd like you to go through and talk about your justification for special
The
exception.
special exception, very well. Then starting off the special exception, the applicant requests a special exception as per Goffstown zoning ordinance, section 15.3.2 et sec, to allow for multifamily use in the R1 zone. As you've just heard the engineer speak, this intended project is to renovate the existing building that has historically been used as a Masonic temple. Property is sometimes referred to, for the record, as tax map 29 lot 36, located in the R1 zone. Currently, the property is developed with the Masonic temple building, and it is the intention of the applicant to improve and expand that building just slightly to convert it into 12 residential units, some 1 bedrooms and perhaps some 2 bedrooms, some varying sizes. You just heard Jeff speak to some, on the smaller side around 500 square feet and or 400, I should say 400 plus, upwards of 500 plus. Very reminiscent of every apartment I lived in my 20s and early 30s, and I think that is the point, is the target folks here, is the hope is to diversify the housing stock here in Goffstown in accordance with your master plan. As I read on page 4 of that plan, there's a push to try and have a diversification for all ages. And younger people are struggling right now because can't afford anything. So that's sort of the idea, is to add that. Property already has sizable parking that can very easily accommodate this proposal. The surrounding area is residential. This is a residential proposal. Now currently, upwards of about 80 people could come to this Masonic temple when they meet. Whether they do or not, I don't know. But that's the capacity that it has at the moment. So the traffic sort of is a wash here. So you'd have roughly 12 units with at least, I guess, presumably 12 people, possibly a couple more. But otherwise, they're sort of there like anybody else, 9 to 5 kind of drill. Whereas the Masonic temple probably meets, you have this explosion of many people at once, and then they're gone. Property is town water and sewer. That's obviously very significant. Again, we anticipate about 17 cars is a good educated guess, where we got 24 spaces available. And it's obviously common knowledge that we're in a housing crisis and there's a need for housing. So walking through the special exception criteria, section 15.3.2.1.1 for the record. The specific site is an appropriate location for such use, being consistent with the town's current master plan. Well, again, the proposal and its site location are close to the main center of town. The site already has town water and sewer as required. Surrounding area is largely residential, and so is what is being proposed. There's an existing building that can easily be improved into a multifamily building. It's a very logical next step for this building, or repurposing. Again, we need housing in the state, everywhere. And finally, given that these units are a little smaller, it is advantageous project for younger people, younger single people who are starting out in life. And again, as I mentioned, page 4 of your master plan discusses that need for diversification, and we think we fit the bill there. Next section, 15.3.2.1.2 for the record. The size or frequency of the use will not significantly alter the character of the neighborhood. Well, the character of the neighborhood is residential. Currently, the Masonic temple is not really consistent with the character of the neighborhood, as there's a periodic influx of all these people for these meetings at once. And again, it's a residential area and it's not being used for residential use. This approval will turn this meeting hall into housing, into residential uses that is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. The site is excellently designed for this proposal because it already has parking, water, sewer, a convenient driveway with the one-way in and out, as you've just heard the engineer discuss. And of course, you got the sidewalks that take you right into the center of town. Which brings me to the next one, section 15.3.2.1.3 for the record. The use will not create a nuisance or hazard to vehicles or pedestrians in a manner that cannot be ameliorated. Again, the property is well suited for this use. While there may be a slight increase in traffic by trips, which would be consistent with any multifamily project, it will not be an influx of these 80 people at any given time when these temple holds its meetings. There's no evidence to suggest that Mountain Road and Knollcrest Road cannot support the estimated traffic that this is going to produce. Furthermore, the property is located very close to the center of Goffstown. Use will be residential in a residential area, and again, there are sidewalks. There's no reason to suspect that this is going to be harmful to any pedestrians when you've got the access right there for somebody to walk right down to the Cumberland Farms, or take a left and head right down into the center of town, or even walk here. Next section, 15.3.2.1.4, for the record, the proposed location is a sufficient size to allow for adequate and appropriate facilities for the proper operation of the use. The property already possesses much of what is needed. A large building to be renovated into multifamily housing. Plenty of parking, water and sewer in place. It's amazing that for once I don't have to make some kind of pitch about well water or septic. That's not an issue here. Additionally, we have the sidewalk, as I mentioned, that accesses the property side on Mountain Road, as well as the sidewalk across that opposite side on Knollcrest Road. And I believe, as you heard Jeff talk about, we're going to sort of fix up that Knollcrest side there so it's not sort of blending right into the road as it is now, right into Knollcrest. As such, we propose that this is not going to be hazardous for pedestrians or motor vehicles. We think we have it very set up quite nicely to handle with motor vehicles. And finally, we have 15.3.2.1.5 for the record. The proposed location is of sufficient size to allow for appropriate buffers of this use to adjacent properties. Well, with respect to the buffers to the adjacent properties, minimal dimensional relief is required here. Because much of what exists today is already in place and there's no evidence that the adjacent properties are being negatively impacted. In fact, as you've heard Jeff speak of, we're going to fix up some of the drainage issues that have been problematic, which has received the blessing of your Conservation Commission, as well as tidying up some of the parking. And as you heard Jeff talk about, we're essentially making the property more conforming than it is today. That's of course not to say that it will be conforming, because it's not. It's a pre-existing non-conforming site. And again, we also, this proposal does contemplate a solid stockade fence around the southern border of the line to buffer some of these other adjacent properties, to give them some more screening. And so that is all I have for the special exception criteria. Of course, we are all here if you have any further questions.
Question on that fence you're talking about. I see it indicated here on the abutter to the, looking at the map to the
South, I think
right.
Jeff, yeah, was just
But you're also talking about a fence along the Whittlebrook side of the property?
We didn't show anything there. There's a tree line out there, and there's some, what I would consider heavier vegetation there. Certainly we have to go to the planning board for this project. I know the planning board gets into a lot of screening considerations.
Much more minutiae level than we do here, so, okay, but it would be either a fence or some sort of a vegetative buffer that's already in place there then.
Right, there's already vegetation to the south. What we thought was, I guess this southern abutter here, we felt that we should be doing some sort of fencing and landscaping there. The final form of that, of course, would be planning purview, but our intent would be to buffer our use.
That would also be a visual barrier for the abutter on that side from headlights of cars parking
Precisely,
after
yeah.
dark,
Correct.
etc.
Yeah, precisely, yeah.
Okay, anyone, members of the board, feel free.
Good. I love it.
So I'm trying to figure out where 12 units came from. It's at 3/4 of an acre, so that means that the dwelling per acreage, if I did my math right, is 14 or 16, right? Where you can have 2. So that's one thing. Like when we start looking at variances, like usually, okay, if they're close, okay, if, you know, they're within this reason, it's okay. We're looking at 6 times the allowed units. We're looking at an average size of less than 2/3. So it's less than 500 square feet per unit. I have some challenges there.
No, it's
That's
I
a
think
lot
it's-
of ask.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think on the one hand, again, there's a desire to add that diversification in your housing stock. I don't think you have a lot of small studio apartments, 1-bedroom apartments in Goffstown that I can think of. But certainly not that close to the center of town. And the other one's a cost-based analysis. I mean, it's going to be a lot of capital to do this work. And improvements to this place. So, you know, naturally, you know, as any developer, they want to have, you know, try to increase the density so that it's worthwhile to them. Otherwise, if you just make it two places out of it, you know, then that doesn't kind of justify the cost.
Is there a workforce component in the targeting of your rental audience?
I mean,
here?
we're not availing ourselves of workforce housing or anything like that, but it's certainly, I think it's suffice to say that these apartments will probably be more on the affordable end. I mean, I can let Ray speak to that, but.
So because of the size, naturally, they will have a lower rent cost than, say, an 800 square foot apartment. But we are doing just, we're not looking at workforce, you know, for.
You're
lower
talking
cost.
you're talking market rate.
Market rate, correct. But because of the size, in essence, they will end up being less than, you know, say going to the mills and getting a 700 square foot or 800 square foot apartment.
Yeah, I'm aware of the cost of right across the road on Factory Street there, what those units cost there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so that kind of leads into the question of, you know, why we look at 12. You know, we looked at what can we fit, that we can fit a 1-bedroom apartment and utilize the space and not add impervious surface and be able to, you know, still either maintain or reduce. And we were able to do that by reducing the parking lot and adding building there, so.
I'm still making these units
still-
nice.
Exactly, yeah, these are going to be, I don't want to say on the higher end, but we're not going to be cutting costs anymore. We're not going to be looking to put individuals into this unit at a very low rate that might bring, I don't want to say riffraff to the area, but we want to maintain a professionalism in the building and, you know, shoot for young professionals to rent these apartments.
Bruce, anything
Mr.
from
Chair?
you? Go ahead.
This is Bruce, yes. I'd like to comment a little bit about the, I guess I get hung up on the density issues. By answering the special exception, these are in the R1 district. By definition, that's development at medium densities, all at village scale. So I looked up what medium densities are, and that falls between detached suburban housing and large multi-story building. So I guess not as large as the ones on Factory Street, but obviously not single-family suburban housing. So that I kind of had to, I'm having to wrestle with a little bit on that to say, okay, are we still within the confines of an R1 district definition? And we could be. We know that the table of principal uses, it allows multifamily by special exception, which they are trying to do. I guess I'm getting hung up on the variance that later on we need for the density by ordinance, where they're only allowed 2, and they're requesting 12. That's where it's kind of the hard, okay, the table's telling us we have to provide a minimum amount, and they want a lot more, but is the zoning ordinance and the master plan saying, well, we can variance that? I don't know, maybe we need a little more from the applicant to persuade that density argument.
Well, if I heard you correctly, with respect to the special exception, if I'm hearing you correctly, sir, it sounds like you're struggling with the size of this project versus, you know, what that special exception is intended for. And I think my comment to that would be that this building and its proposal is nicely suited for the size of this building and what's being put there. And despite the density, I'd like to reiterate that we're actually making this property more conforming, resolving drainage issues, and shrinking down the parking lot some. So I would contend that we're actually making this whole use on this property somewhat smaller than what is going on there currently.
Oh, I definitely agree. The improvements on the site from existing non-conformance to at least doing some stormwater retention treatment, that's definitely a win-win. No problems there. And I would have no problem of granting variances for working in the setbacks to achieve that part. I think it really comes down to variances in the, I think it's table 4.3 with the bracket number 7 about the allowed 2 dwelling units. The existing structure can, and the addition to the lot size would allow, we're proposing 12 dwelling units. However, is that 12 dwelling units in concert with the R1 district definition of development of medium density? Prove that to me and I think you got me.
Well, I think that it is medium density for what's being proposed, and I think the location is key here too. Let's remember, we're just a short little walk down from Cumberland Farms. I think we got what, Route 13, Route 114 right there, and bang a left, you're right in the center of downtown and all the restaurants. I mean, this is not a rural part of Goffstown. However, I know you don't have to go. You go a short distance in one direction, you're in a rural area, and you go a short distance the other, you know, you're right in the middle of the downtown area. So I think that this project with the 12 units, given that they're small, so you know you're not going to have families of 4 people in these small apartments. This is going to be one person, maybe a couple, something like that. It's not going to be a huge influx of people, despite the 12-unit ask, and it's certainly, given its geographical location to the the sort of busier parts of town, I guess I'll call it, I think it's appropriate. And certainly, I'd say with the special exception criteria, which I think is the moment where we are right now in this ask, I think we've checked all those boxes nicely because this site is already well suited to accommodate this request. And again, a big part of that stems from the fact that this building is already there and it needs to be repurposed. And it needs the facelift, and I think this is a good project for that. I think it'll be good for the town, and another point that I probably get to a little later on with variance criteria, but I'll point out that given these units are smaller and going to be geared towards the sort of younger professionals starting out, I wouldn't worry too much about your public schools getting flooded with a bunch of kids.
Really?
I would agree. This is Bruce, and I guess I'd yield back to the chair, but I have no problems with the special exception as being presented.
All right, and I would just add to that, after listening to this, I also think that the location favors this type of development. If this building were, let's say, move it a mile or two up up Mountain Road, where it's in the middle of a strictly residential area, I'd be a little bit more dubious about it, but I think its proximity, as you say, both to the village, to the conveniences, is something that it seems to be a fairly suitable site for this type of proposal.
I would say that. I would agree that should weigh heavily with the board, and let's remember the sidewalk's already there. So these people can walk right out the door and walk to that village district, right?
All right. Anything further, Jason? You have a thought?
I don't know. I'd like to hear some public comment if there's any.
All right,
because
well,
I'm having some.
We will get to that.
challenges with this.
I think we need to, procedurally, Jack, I'm gonna ask you procedurally on this. Can we split the public hearing, vote on the special exception, which again, I think is the threshold issue, and then return to hear the various variance arguments procedurally? Is that,
Procedurally, yes.
okay, we're,
If I may, just as a point of order, I think that would make sense, Mr. Chair, if you just have out the special exception now, because it is a threshold issue. And then if we survive that, then we can probably go through all the variance criteria for all the variances we're asking and probably have everybody, all the, naysayers come up and do what they want to do.
okay, if you're agreeable, I
Think that
think I
makes
would like.
sense, guys?
I think
Agree
I
with
would,
that?
I think I would like to do that. If you've got anything you'd like to add, otherwise I'll ask you to step back
Anything I missed that you can
I'm
think
all
of?
set.
All right.
and let's see if there's any members of the public here who want to be heard on this. Come on up, sir. Please identify yourself for the record and tell us what you'd like to say.
My name is Hugh Smith, and I happen to be the direct abutter. I'm the one that they're building right up against, 12 Knollcrest. So that property abuts mine. It's a single-family residence.
Okay,
That's-
you're the one on the map there on the
Absolutely.
right-hand
Hugh
side.
Smith. Okay? Their attorney did a good job. But at the same token, it boils down to the same thing. This is an R1 residential single-family neighborhood. It should stay that way. A 12-unit apartment complex is not keeping with the character of the neighborhood. If you were going to put a duplex up there, that's fine. But to do 12 units is not keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Drive up Mountain Road, drive up Knollcrest, they're all single-family homes. The only exception to that is to the left-hand side, which Sudoka developed years ago. They put a nice road in, they put 5 duplexes on slabs for senior housing. My senior clients live in several of them. And as a result, they're all spaced off in between. It's a nice little neighborhood in there, just like Knollcrest, just like Mountain Road. Number 2, this is currently a fraternal order, and it should stay that way. There are all kinds of fraternal orders out there. There's Elks, there's the Grange, there's several companies they can market it to. And if they don't want to market it to a company such as that, why don't they market it to a church? There's all kinds of religious orders trying to find buildings for churches now. The building looks like a church when you look at it. And it would be keeping with the character of the fraternal order, where people would come the one day a week and you'd have several visitors, and then that would be pretty much it. And that's what we've had for years. People would come and then they'd leave. There's several other companies that can market that too. It doesn't have to be a developer for 12 units. To squash 12 units on that little piece of land just doesn't cut it. Number 3, they're doing 5 400 square foot units. They're doing 5 500 square foot units and 2 600 square foot units. I just don't understand why the town of Goffstown has any benefit to small units like that. I realize there's a shortage of housing, but to have units that small, and they're talking about it being for people starting out. Everybody has a right to start out and have some place to rent, but so don't the seniors. Seniors are on a fixed income. They need a place to live too. So where the sidewalks are there, and the Sully's is down the road, and you've got the pizza parlor and the Chinese and the hardware store and everything else, Pumpkin Regatta, whatever, seniors would love those sidewalks to be able to walk into town and do their business, the ones that can't drive. Why does it have to be young kids? I have 2 children, 33 and 36, that I've raised. I'm very familiar with children, okay? And we've taken in others. When you tell me that you're going to have a 12-unit development of young people, you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of a college dorm. Do you want 12 kids living next to you that are 20, 25 years old? There's going to be drinking, yelling, cars riding around. It is not a healthy situation for anybody. Do you want to live next to a college dorm? I don't think anybody in this room wants to. And that's exactly what they're doing. 12 people starting out in a single-family residential, quiet, private neighborhood. Now you got a 12-unit complex next year with all these young kids. That's not in the character of the neighborhood. You also have a situation where they're not looking for one variance. I've been sitting at these meetings before. Alan Gayton retired, but you've got a situation where people come in and they're looking for one variance. My neighbor wants to build a shed and he's 3 feet too close to me. The water is supposed to be 100 feet away, but we're gonna be 70 feet away. Or we don't quite have enough room, we wanna do this, okay? And you grant the variance because it's the right thing to do. This is not the right thing to do. 5 variances. 5, not 1 or 2, 5. And a special exception on top of that to get this thing approved. Ask yourself, if this was a vacant lot today, a vacant lot of that size, would you approve 12 units to be put on that? Absolutely not. Nobody in this room would. It's enough land there for 2 units, a duplex. Buy the building, knock it down, put a duplex on. They're not going to do that. The money doesn't make sense. If this was senior housing, there'd be a whole different attitude to this. Then we'd see the fire department all night long with the red lights going on, okay? The ambulance is coming in. But at this point, a college dorm next to you does not keep the character of the neighborhood. They've got all these references. The attorney's done a great job. He's referencing all these legal cases. You go to the town for information on this, you gotta pay $1 a page for this, and then what am I gonna do? Call one of the attorneys that are friends of mine and say, explain all of this to me? At a $500 an hour rate or whatever? Okay? We don't know what these items are that they're comparing it to. All I know is that they reference if the variance was granted, the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the property currently is not being used to its best potential. Big deal. It's not being used to its best potential. That's the owner's problem at this point. Let them sell it to a church. Let a church go in there and rehab it. It doesn't have to be a 12-unit apartment complex. When they, it's only 3/4 of an acre. If that was a bare lot today, what would you approve on it? You'd approve a duplex maybe. Or subdivide it in half and put 2 singles on it. Forget the wetlands, forget the parking, forget the delivery space. The biggest problem is the hurdle of an R1, single-family residential neighborhood that allows even duplexes, and now you got 12 units of a college dorm going up. Where's our privacy? What rights do we have? Just because property has water, city water and city sewage, okay, and it's up for sale, why does somebody have to come here and do that to us? If I went to this gentleman and bought the piece of land next door to him and wanted to put 12 units up in his single-family neighborhood abutting him, don't you think he'd be here screaming also? Of course he would. I don't understand why, just because they're gonna redo the sewerage a little bit, or they're gonna put some green out there with trees and grass and blah, 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 why we should cower under and we should give in to taking a building that can be sold to many other companies. Plenty of churches out there. The building even looks like a church. Or if it's a vacant lot, why should we put 12 units up in something that would only carry 2? I realize the board volunteers their time. I don't want to keep you any longer than you are. I don't want to be here till midnight tonight for you. But looking at some of these, it's the same answer on all of them. The property currently is not being used to its best potential. Fine, sell it to a church. Or if you're going to develop it, why is it 12? Why isn't it 2 or 4? Why aren't they asking to be turned into a 4-family? Why did it have to be 12? That's a sickness called greed. Somebody needs to make a lot of money. And how are we gonna control who it's rented to? To me, that's gonna be a college dorm next to me, and all I'm gonna hear is all the problems. So, obviously I object to this, okay? And very strongly. And I probably haven't hit all the points I'm supposed to hit, okay? But I'm trying to do the best I can. Please, shut this down, send them home, don't let them spend any more money on anything else. I'm gonna show up at the planning board, I was gonna actually go door to door. This is only the abutters. I'm the next door neighbor, I'm right up against you. And I don't mean to be offensive personally, but I take it personal, okay? It's business to you, it's personal to me.
Please address the chair.
I don't mean to be
Please address the
disrespectful, is what I'm
chair.
saying. So at this point, why do we have to end up with a 12 unit in the amount of space that only hold 2? Thank you for your time, done the best I can.
Thank you for your remarks.
You're
sir.
welcome.
Come on up.
Do we go together or separate?
If you want to come separately, you can come separately. You can come together, whatever.
Family unit, so might as well be together.
My name's Andrew Menifee. I'm the guy on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
please,
We're sandwiched.
please spell your last name for the record, please.
Yeah. Menifee. Menefee. F is in Frank.
Okay, and you're in a butter.
Yes. I live at 9 Mountain Road,
Yep.
right across the street. So, I don't necessarily think it's going to be a college dorm we have to worry about. My concerns are largely the same. Me and my family moved to Goffstown, lovely village, a couple of years ago, after sort of getting our start in New Hampshire, in Manchester, where I was a landlord. We moved up here to kind of get away from that sort of inner city life. And, you know, Pinardville's like 15 minutes down the road. You know, downtown Manchester, you know, it's got its problems, right? That's, when I look at a 12 unit building with 400 to 600 square foot studio apartments. I mean, let's be real, that's what they're gonna be. You can't squeeze 2 bedrooms into 600 square feet, not realistically anyway. I don't see, I work with a lot of young professionals, and the young professionals that I work with would scoff at a 600 square foot unit. They would live at home, cash their or bank their salary until they could afford a single family home before they ever moved into something like that. So I don't think we get young kids. I think we get a lot of people in the lower income brackets moving into Goffstown and bringing a whole different slew of problems with them, right? I will never forget walking with my daughter through downtown Manchester and seeing heroin needles on the street, calling the police department to see what they could do about the issue, and being told, get a pair of gloves and pick it up yourself, right? I don't want to live in that environment again. And frankly, with the density of the units that they're talking about getting exception on, that's the problem I see occurring. I mean, beyond that, I got some notes here. You know, if they're looking to improve the water issue, then more power to them. I've got plenty of problems with the local water authority, which we don't need to get into right now. But I think 800 square feet, that's a requirement for a reason, right? It's meant to ensure safe, livable conditions and prevent overcrowding. Smaller units are going to lead to lower quality housing. No landlord in their right mind is going to turn somebody away that passes a background check, right? And just say, and say, no, I don't want your money. I'm just going to hold out for the next guy. That's just not how business works, right? If you get that background check and you get that security deposit, you're good to go, right? So if somebody's flown under the radar and just not been caught yet, right, they can move right in and start doing whatever kind of bad stuff they want to do. And you can't tell me that a single person is going to just move in because it's 600 square feet. There are plenty of super low income families that have moved their immediate and extended family into little shoeboxes meant to be studio apartments, right? And they can put up a false front to, landlord that's even doing their due diligence. I don't want to comment on their business model. I don't know anything about it, but right, like you can have acts of bad faith on both sides of that equation. And if they're doing what they're saying they're going to do and providing this housing at a competitive market rate, then it's realistic to believe that anyone on Zillow, anyone on Redfin, anyone on Apartments.com is going to see that listing and say, "Oh my God, I can move into this place right in the heart of Goffstown and get the heck out of downtown Manchester, downtown Bernardville," right? Like, this is the wrong move. Not that I don't want everybody in this equation to be profitable and live their best life, but this is the wrong move. And it stinks, agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Anything?
I'm done.
Mine is a safety issue. The safety issue is all of the cars that are gonna be going through this area now
That's
that
a
you
good
have.
point. The
12
Masons are only
units.
there once a week.
Not even.
Yeah.
Not even. I mean, they watch the building, which is really cool. It makes me feel safe. I like them. They're friendly. They're okay. But they're not living there 24 hours a day. You don't have the constant traffic of what, 12 units would have. Every person, assuming, would have a car to get to work or go to the grocery store or do whatever they need to do. But they're going to be going in and out all hours of the night. Morning commute is going to happen. That's going to tie up the front. How is that going to look? We live close to a high school, so our morning commute is going to be affected by this because when we have to go to work, she has to go to school. It's already a quirk, just getting to the circle around the high school. So now you're going to have 12 separate units with, assuming 12 professionals going to work, or maybe, who knows. Anyway, so the thing is that, if they're kids drive crazy. If it's a senior citizen, I don't mind the seniors. They're cool, they're very quiet, they're polite, they wave. We feel safe right now. But, if we have a bunch of individuals that we don't know who's living there, they don't have any stock, they're just renting, you don't know who's living next door to you now. I just want to know more or less when this is going to happen so we can flee. Because we're quiet, we're going to leave. I don't want to live next to an apartment complex. I like the quiet, personally, I mean.
It changes the whole character
It really
of the
does.
neighborhood.
I don't want to live next to something like that, and we'll leave, and fine, so you'll have another neighbor, I guess, or whatever you guys
Then we'll be
wanna
coming
do.
to you for a variance for a 4-door,
Yeah.
right? Multifamily.
We'll rent out and leave too. But we don't want that type of environment for my kid. And now I have to wonder, who's living next door. Because personally, right now, I mean, there's veterans, there's all kinds of cool gramps living next door. We like them. We love the neighborhood. But, if you don't know who's living next door, and it changes everything. Like, I personally, and then, now I have to wonder if she's going to get hit by a car if somebody's not paying attention, versus right now, the traffic is very low, personally, but, fencing maybe, I don't know, but at the same time, the other issue is, so you guys are talking about the drainage and all the water stuff, and that's all fine and dandy, but I work all hours of the night, and I know that Goffstown Water Precinct has a fire hydrant directly across the street from the Freemasons Lodge off of Mountain. And I've seen it get opened up because I guess they're emptying the drain for, maybe keeping the pipes from getting frozen. Last time it was like around March, February when it happened, and they just full on spray all of the water out onto the street, and it turned into like basically a lake. And I don't know what they're doing, fine, whatever. It's obviously something that has to get done. But what if there's now runoff coming off of this apartment complex? So where does all that water go? Is it gonna go into our property? Is it gonna go across the street into the field into our neighbor's property? Like, that's something that's gonna be very interesting because, like I know that those pipes have to get drained, at some point. So I'm worried about it. I don't want it, like, all that water. What if it, ruins something in our yard? We have all kinds of,
I'm afraid though, something like that is kind of, that's outside the purview of
Right.
what this board can deal with. But, I hear you both on the traffic and the density issues. By the way, ma'am, could we get your first name for the record?
Oh, Michelle Menifee,
Thank you very much.
sure,
Anything further to add, folks?
That's about it.
that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
we
for
appreciate your time.
testimony.
I've got a lot of respect for what you guys do.
thank you.
If Denise was up here, she would say, keep in mind, we always have a place for people to
Yeah.
come up here, so.
There's always an empty chair.
Okay, obviously we have another
Yes, you
interested
do.
party to testify. Welcome, Denise, we know who you
Good
are.
evening, board. Okay, I just want to make a couple of comments. The density is caused by this, there's already a building there. This is not an empty lot, it's already a building. And projects have to be feasible. It's not about greed, it's about making sense. People don't do projects to lose money. Doesn't mean they're greedy, it means they have to make it work. So I just want to make a comment about that. I also don't believe that people are going to be turned down if they're not young children or young kids. They're just speculating that that might be what they require, what will be addressed, what will go to this unit. It could be seniors. It's not, marketed toward, can't be prejudiced on who asked to go in and to move into there. As far as the traffic goes and the safety, I think that they're only improving the situation. There's now going to be an entrance in and an exit out. Right now, it's pretty much a free-for-all, how you get in and out of there. So there's going to be, the traffic is going to definitely be resolved. It may be traffic every day, but it's not going to be what could possibly be there, depending on what it does get sold for. If it gets sold for a church, it could be, about what they said, 60, 80 cars. That's a lot. I think the key thing is they are reducing impervious surface. That's a huge thing. That little brook does definitely get some runoff from this property. And that's due to the fact that back in the 70s, they didn't make you do anything with drainage. They're going to remedy this. This is why the Conservation Board supported this so strongly. That's it.
Thank you, Denise.
A few quick rebuttals, if I may?
One last thing, because I need to do this. We do have a letter here from another abutter, Betty Martell of 20 Mountain Road. Principal complaint that she voices in that is concerns about the water issues. She reports that she's had her basement frequently flooded by overflows from Whittle Brook. And, I just mentioned that to get her remarks entered into the record. Come on back,
Thank
come
you,
on
and
back up.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment too, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, to some of the things I heard, the essential character of the neighborhood is residential. What we're proposing is a residential use. If you read the case law from the Supreme Court, when they talk about what changes the essential character of a neighborhood, if we were here trying to say, hey, we're going to put in a Walmart with a drive-through cannabis dispensary in an R1 neighborhood, That would be changing the essential character of the neighborhood. Adding some more housing, albeit an apartment building, is not changing the character of the neighborhood, which is residential. I've heard several comments about, hey, why don't we do elderly housing? I represent 3 towns in this state. I represent Hollis, Brookline, and Lineborough. I'm their town council, and when I'm not in those towns, I represent a lot of guys like Ray. I also do some estate planning, by the way, if anybody needs a will or a trust. But I can tell you that everybody's trying to put up elderly housing. Why? Because people don't complain about it, right? People don't complain about it. It's welcomed with open arms. It doesn't flood the school system, so they get their approval. So, you know, everyone's doing it. So it's suffice to say that there's plenty of projects going up for housings for older people. Comments about this, you know, kids and being a college dorm, I think with all due respect, that's pretty speculative. You know, these are not going to be college kids per se, and if they are college kids, then they must have some pretty well-off parents to be able to afford these apartments. Because again, as we've gone on record saying, these are not going to be slummy places, they're going to be nice. Which leads me to my next point that the gentleman here was bringing up. We're not going to be downtown Manchester by putting a 12-unit building in an already built building that's there. Again, we're repurposing this building for some much-needed housing in the area. As we've said, we're not availing ourselves of any workforce housing, which I know is also desperately needed in the state, but we're not doing that here today, so I don't think it'd be fair to say that we're going to be attracting low-income people. As you also heard her say, the safety we would contend is going to be improved by what we are going to do. We're going to fix up that parking lot and keep the traffic flowing nicely. Again, we're very close to state highways, so it's not like we're putting this project out in the boondocks. And I just want to say, you know, for the record, that we will have a no heroin needle policy in this building, and no one needs to worry about that at this project, okay? And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure, go ahead.
I could just add one few items. I do hear what some of the abutters are saying, and I definitely want to address a couple of them. You know, I've heard the word greed several times out of all of the abutters. I don't know if they coordinated that, but ultimately, you know, they say it's not personal, but they do use that word, and I do want to give a little background. So, in my line of work, I don't just own apartment buildings, I don't just own housing. We work with a veteran organization. I put several veterans into housing at my expense because I cared about the cause. And I was able to take a veteran and his 4 young daughters out of a burnt down house in Derry where his hand was burnt, he couldn't work. He's now making easily over $100,000 a year. He was able to live for free in one of my houses with his family and escape. It was fall time, had no running water, no electricity, and that's the conditions they were living in. But my generosity through the organization gave him housing, gave his family housing, and now he's living in one of my properties and paying, and proud of that, and working towards saving to rebuild his home. I have a half dozen other veterans that were in different situations that I was able to give housing to. So greed is not part of this. I don't need to be doing this. I do it because I enjoy it, and I enjoy working with people and helping them. So that's one part. Another part is, you know, all kids and young adults. Yes, we want young adults with thriving careers to come to the town. No, you know, I feel that's something that we want. That's something I'm going to target. I think it's something that's important. But we have one unit that is handicap accessible. Great, we're going to bring someone in that you know may not be able to afford, or maybe they can, but we're going to be able to bring someone in that may not have the right situation to live in and give them that situation. We're going to have, you know, if someone elderly needs to move in, great. We're going to have the ability to get them in and out of their units easily. So it's not just targeted towards a college dorm. So I want to make sure that the board knows that that is not the intent. We don't want a bunch of 25-year-olds partying. We look for 3 times the rent in income. We require a 700 credit score. We do criminal background checks. I personally want to make sure that the people that are living, one, make it easy for me because I don't want to deal with that type of behavior in any level. And I try to make sure at every level, and you can't catch it all, and I've been through and I've had to evict people, and it is what it is. I don't like going through that process, but at the end of the day, I'm here to create housing and help people grow and thrive. And so, you know, we're gonna make sure that the neighbors are as happy as can be if this project goes through. You know, I can't make everyone happy about every single topic, but I'm here to work with everyone and make sure that everyone is happy, as much as we can. You know, putting a duplex in that property, to, you know, the millions of dollars it's gonna take to renovate this property and do this project, to do a duplex, I mean, the rent would to substantiate that, I don't even know if that would even be a thing. You know, it's just, it's not something that's reasonable. We talked about renting it to other churches. So the property was on the market for quite a while before I put that offer in. They had offers from drug rehabilitation housing, and that they chose not to go forward with because this project made sense in their mind, where that project did not. They care about the neighborhood as much as the people that live in that neighborhood, it seems, and I respect that of them. And they chose to go with us and do this project. They didn't have to. They had other offers. They didn't have church offers. And I can tell you, churches are selling themselves. You look in Derry, there's been a church on the market for I don't know, 3 years. They can't get anything approved there. So churches are selling, they're not buying. Otherwise, a church would have already bought that property. You know, I think it's foolish to say, let's hold out, it's not our problem, let's let them find another church to buy that property. It doesn't make sense. You're not gonna put a commercial property in there either. That doesn't make sense to put a store, you know, a service business. I don't know, maybe that's up to you guys, but it doesn't seem like a neighbor would want that either. And the only other piece to really touch on is the part about, you know, I feel like they're gone now, but you know, them and their family, like I would never want to push them out because there's apartments. There's 12 cars, maybe 14, 16 cars. That doesn't change traffic. It doesn't bring in heroin needles. It doesn't bring in bad people because there's 12 homes. We're not building 70 homes, 80 homes, and we're not putting up 7 stories. It's 12 apartments. And if the size is an issue, if we say, okay, we don't want 12, do you want 10, do you want 11? Like, if you look at the layout of it, there will be really long, skinny apartments. There's a hallway down the middle. I mean, can you reconfigure everything? Yeah. Again, at what cost? So, you know, the apartment layout is what makes sense in there. Otherwise, we would have really long, skinny apartments that would be very odd. Or we would have to reconfigure the whole thing. The addition, that can be changed a little bit, so, you know, definitely open to that, but we're not, you know, it needs to make sense and not lose money as a complex. So, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, how many other properties do you run? Just curious.
I have 38 doors, so.
In just this
All,
area?
so I only own in like Concord South, and only in New Hampshire. I only focus New Hampshire and Concord South. It's kind of where but I also, I support public safety. I have a protective equipment supply house, so that's what I do. I do this for joy. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy working with families, helping people grow. It's fun to see, you know, a single person. Good example, I've had two properties, 2 single-family homes, where they bought properties, and I was able to get them out of their lease, send them on their way. I'm not that type of landlord. Oh, you're on a lease for another year. Whatever, you're good. I'm happy for you. You started your family, you're moving on, and I will find someone else. I'll survive. So.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? I think at this point, if there are no further remarks from anyone in the audience, I'm going to close this portion of the public hearing so that the board can vote on the special exception. If the special exception passes, then we will move on to the multiple variances for this. Any objection to that from anyone on the board?
I don't have one.
No. Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Can you explain to the applicant that you do not have 5 voting members?
I believe we covered that. I will reiterate that. I believe we covered that in the intro to the meeting, but as you probably know, you have the right to have a full board to hear your complaints. Tonight, we have 4 voting members of the board because I've appointed Bruce to be the voting alternate on all matters tonight. And Denise has had to recuse herself being a party to this. So you've only got 4 to vote tonight. If you're comfortable with proceeding on that basis, we'll proceed with a vote on that basis.
I think my understanding is we'd never have more than 4 at this point, right? Because you only have 5 members, is that correct?
That is correct. We are hoping we have someone running for the board in March, and we have someone who wants to be an alternate waiting in the wings, but neither of them are on board yet. So basically what you see and don't see is what you got.
I'll do my diligence and check in with my client. We're okay, we'll go for it. Thanks.
All right, very good. Any discussion from members of the board? And if not, I will entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have some discussion and with that, a motion. In regards to the special exception criteria, 15.3.2.1.1, a specific site is an appropriate location for such use being consistent with the town's current master plan. We know the zoning ordinance is a result of the master plan, so that's where I have to go back to the zoning ordinance and the definition of the R1 district is a development at medium densities, all at village scale. And I looked up what medium density is. There's no pure definition. It says falls between detached suburban housing and large multi-story building. I personally think that this is a stretch, especially with adding on to the building, I believe it's 4 more units, that I think it's too large of a scale for that housing in that district of R1. So I don't think it satisfies that section special exception. And likewise, the second one of 15.3.2.1.2, the size or frequency of the use will not significantly alter the character of the neighborhood. I have to politely disagree with the applicant that it's residential and it doesn't change the character. Yes, it is residential use, but it's a high-density residential use that's being proposed from into an existing structure and parcel. I think it's great with all the site work that would happen if it could happen, because that rectifies a lot of problems of an existing site, going forward on the site plan. But I don't think it satisfies a special exception. So, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to deny based on those facts and criteria.
Do we have a second? Hearing none, Bruce, motion fails for lack of a second. I have to take a different point of view than you, because I do feel this falls into that category. It's definitely between single-family housing and a multi-story apartment building, and while the density is a bit of a stretch for the area, as I mentioned before, I think given the site its nature and its proximity to the village. And, you know, I think if we were to look around, and I don't know if the applicant has made this kind of survey of the nearby area, but I think if you look at a lot of the old Victorians in and around downtown Goffstown, you're going to find a lot of them have been converted into multi-unit buildings, including there are several fairly large multi-unit buildings in the town. I don't know. I feel that it fits that medium definition, and I would, you know, I just, as I say, I disagree with your point on that. I think that it's arguable that it is probably a higher use of the building. I think any one of us who's attended events there and stuff like. And it's a building that's been severely underutilized for a number of years, and you know, I can't find that I can object to it on that basis.
I mean, I'll admit, I have some reservations about the number of units. And, I mean, I agree with the gentleman who spoke that when this came across, I mean, I immediately went to college apartment rental. But I also, increasing the size of the apartments is not going to change that. It just means that multiple college students would be sharing the same apartment. I'm not sure that buys anybody any relief from that problem. It's certainly different than what I was expecting would show there, you know, knowing the area like I do. Because I see that character of that neighborhood as single family houses. The further you move up Mountain Road, the larger those houses get. Yeah, I don't necessarily, I don't agree with Bruce's reasoning, but I'm not sure I'm completely on board yet either. I'm still kind of on the fence here.
John, any thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I heard the guys talking about people starting out and stuff. One of my first apartments was about a quarter of a mile up the road. There's bi-level townhouses right on the right on Mountain Road, and even a quarter of a mile from this location. That was one of my first locations. So this whole area has a lot of, and I grew up here, and I see the potential in this project. I love it. I'm seeing it, and when I saw the presentation, I even loved it more. We need housing, and what they're doing to that lot in making it better water-wise, because yes, it does, I've seen that flood in that little belly right there many times, you know, but where they're gonna be doing the drainage pond and, you know, if I'm gonna lean the other way, the only thing I'm gonna lean is the number of units, you know? Is it 10 or 12, you know? But again, if you go to 10, what are you doing with the footprint? And I'm looking at the footprint multiple times, and as a builder, this works. It does work. You know, it's not like there's multi-families not a quarter of a mile from this location on the right-hand side of the road. It's not all single-family homes over there on Mountain Road. In the amount of, there's 80 parking spots there now, roughly, around that whole building. They're shrinking it down to 24. there's an addition to the building. The building is in great shape. It's, the word repurpose has a lot of good potential for change in the town and what we're looking for in, you know, I'm on the other side of town in Bernardville. We have 36 unit buildings going up right on the side, you know, in people's backyards over there. The town has always been kept pristine and very low, but this location, again, being right in the center of town, by the sidewalks, it would bring life to the center of town. I'd like to see more development towards the center of town. You know, this is why this project to me is very attractive, and I see a lot of good potential for it.
Let me ask, if I may, one question of the applicants. When you're talking about the side of the property on Knollcrest there, you're talking about removing impervious and landscaping the part along the side of Knollcrest there that's currently paved?
So if you look at Knollcrest, you see the shade of gray here?
Mm-hmm.
This giant swath right through there? Compare that to the, see how narrow Knollcrest is? What happens right now is there's parking that goes nose in against the building, and when people leave, they have to back out into Knollcrest. It's just not a safe thing. It may have been okay in the 70s, but it's frowned upon now. So we don't need it. It's a way we can redefine Knollcrest if we remove it, so you don't have this airport runway width of pavement out there. We can redefine it here, and then we can keep the parking to the minimum that we need to serve the development, which reduces the impervious coverage in Knollcrest plus here, and we can plant it, landscape it, that kind of stuff.
Okay, that was basically my question. You'd basically be improving the look along the Knollcrest side of the property.
Exactly, dress up the corner a lot better.
Thank you. Anyone on the board with further ideas? I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one. Don't everybody jump in at once.
I'm not gonna make the motion this time. I'll listen to the motions.
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? All right, I'm going to second that motion for purposes of discussion to get it on the floor. Let's talk about it and let's bring it to a vote. Bruce, your thoughts?
Well, again, I wouldn't be able to support this. I still think it doesn't satisfy the special exception, especially the one about the character. It really, and I have no problems with redeveloping the site. I think that's great. I realize that housing needs are imminent, I mean, statewide, countrywide. However, we're in the zone R1. And R1, by definition, says it falls between a detached suburban housing and large multi-story building. Is this so? I think it doesn't satisfy that definition, but again, it's the discussion to approve it.
What number do you think would satisfy that definition? 8 units, 10 units?
I think at first blush would be the same footprint that's there and utilize, I think that's 8 units without the addition. I think the addition causes a little bit of a, that's pushing, you know, it appears to be greedy, and I know it's not. It's really to make the numbers work. But that kind of pushes the bubble into a little bit more than just the detached suburban housing. And I have no problems with repurposing buildings.
I have to do math.
Yeah.
Might take a minute.
Jason is talking to himself and calculating. Bear with us for a moment, folks.
So, if we get rid of the addition on there, then it only changes the average size of the unit up to 533 from 497. 36 square feet is not substantial, I don't think.
John?
If you take away the addition, then you're taking away the means of egress for the way the footprint works, you know? Now you're eating part of the stairway up to make apartments into that section. When you add the addition, the stairs going upstairs and in and out of the building is created, and then the hallway in between. If you take away the addition in the back, you're gonna have to utilize that space, you're diminishing. To make the footprint work, you need to have that addition, and it's 1,800 square feet?
Almost 1,900 according to the plan.
1,880 square feet. To make this work, you need to have the addition. You know, or you're gonna be eating the needs of in and out of the building, you're gonna be.
Right, and I understand that layout, and that might have to have an addition to make the existing building work for life safety, egress, access issues. That addition part wouldn't give me heartache to have an addition to put stairwells to address the existing building to make it from the change of a commercial building to the residential use. But that's kind of we're in a hard spot. We have an existing non-conforming use and the building in the R1 zone, so there's a given that we're working with, but we're converting that use to a high-density residential use in the R1 zone. Residential use is good in the R1 zone, we know that. But is a high-density use good?
I think
I'm not sold on that. I mean, I realize that our residential use is good in that zone. Converting that use that's existing non-conforming now into a residential use, that's a win, that's good. But I have heartache of going too far, of too much residential density use in the R1 zone.
As I said before, I think if this were deeper into what I would call a strictly R1 area, I would be more concerned with it, but the fact when you've got a Cumberland Farms 500 feet away from it, and you're on the perimeter of the town commercial area, you know, again, I just don't see it's such a huge jump. Like I say, if it were anywhere else but where it sits right now, I would have different set of problems with it, but I think it's the right site, it's the right use, but I think what we're stuck on here is the number, whether it will work for the developer if we were to say condition it on a lower number of units. I would be unfortunately, sir, the public hearing's closed, so, you know, if we were to condition it on a lower number of units, whether it would still work for them, we don't wanna, you know, I don't wanna kill the project if we can find a way to come to a consensus on a number.
And also, what I'm seeing is the amount of work on the not just the building itself, what they're doing around on the property to make things work is gonna take a substantial amount of money, and with those other 4 units, that brings back some of the investment to do all the outside stuff, to bring everything up to grade, especially with the brook and all the water issues, you know? There's 4 more units there.
Well,
Not just to mention the egress and the way the stairwells are all wrapped into this footprint.
what you got, Jack?
Yep, so I guess this is a question for the chairman, as well as the rest of the board, that is this development at medium density, all at the village scale? That's from our definition. And then from the definition of medium density, does this fall between detached suburban housing and large multi-story building? I think it probably does fall as a medium density. I think it satisfies that. It falls between detached suburban housing and large multi-story building. It's not that. So I think we can say that, okay, this is medium density development. So we go back into our zoning ordinance, right? R1, by definition, says it's development at medium densities, all at village scale. Does that mean being close to the village?
Oh.
Yeah.
So I think, Brute, you know, as you were saying that if these were, you know, if this was 1,200 square foot units, I think I would have just immediately gone to no. I mean, one of my biggest concerns knowing this area was the traffic over there, in general, right? You have the Worthley Hill, Mountain Road, Merrill Road Highway during the school year. I think that is going to be something that planning is going to have to look at, because it is introducing cars into Knollcrest to get onto Mountain to get out, but that's
But
something
again,
they'll have to deal
that's-
with.
That
so.
is not our purview, however.
Well, you've got a motion, and you got your second, right? So I guess I'm ready for you to call for the vote.
Any further, Bruce, any further discussion from you?
No, I think I'm well discussed out.
All right, I'm going to ask for a vote by roll call. Bruce, yea or nay? And
I'd say yay.
okay, understanding that was on John's motion to approve. John?
Yay.
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, gentlemen, you have your special exception. Now we get to do it all over again. I would like to take, if no one would mind, before we do, let's take a 5-minute break and stretch. It's 9:20, and I think we're going to be here for a while longer, but thank you for your patience, and we'll take 5 and be back at 9:25. right, we're resuming after a 5-minute recess. We're going to talk now. We took a vote on the special exception before. We're going to talk about the variances now. Mr. Drescher, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As we discussed briefly during the break, for the record, I think we've sort of talked that it would make the most sense. I'm going to bang through the 5 criteria for each of these variances one by one. Most of the arguments, I think you'll find, are pretty repetitive. In addition to that, you guys understand the nature of what we're trying to do here and the nature of the project, so I'm not going to belabor too many facts, just to keep the ball rolling, and then I will highlight facts as necessary specific to each variance request. So with that, I think I'll go right down my variance 1 through 5 in the order that I did submit them. And variance number 1 is relative to the square footage reduction. Applicant is requesting a variance to allow for proposed dwelling units that are less than the 800 square feet, where 800 square feet is the minimum size as per the Goffstown zoning ordinance, 4.4.3.2 for the record. I'll simply say plenty of facts have already been presented by the engineer and myself in the previous special exception presentation. So with that, I'll move right on to prong 1 of the variance criteria. Granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the standard as per the New Hampshire Supreme Court is that assessing prongs 1 and 2, which are the same analysis as per the court, if the variance is granted, will it A, alter the essential character of the neighborhood, or negatively impact the health, welfare, and safety of the surrounding area? And it's always important to note that mere conflict with the zoning ordinance is insufficient, as all variance requests are somewhat averse to the ordinance. Hence, that's why we're here in the first instance. So it's worth noting that prong number 1 is in the negative. That is to say that it does not require that we demonstrate something is in the public interest, just that it is not contrary to the public interest. This request is to allow for residential units that are under the minimum requirement of 800 square feet, which of course would logically be more than affordable. That's not to say, of course, that we are doing affordable housing or workforce housing, which is also desperately needed throughout the state, but it is to make some market rate units more available to more people, or younger people I should say. But we contend that this proposal is in line with the essential character of the neighborhood, which again is residential, and would pose no significant threat to the health, welfare, safety of the surrounding area. And that is evidenced, folks, by the improvements that we are making, both to drainage, to traffic, to the parking lot, etc. The overall goal of these smaller units, once again, is to provide a more diverse housing option where few are otherwise available, and that is in line with your master plan, which again I cited to earlier at page 4. Number 2, prong 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because, once again, as a matter of law, prong 1's analysis is the same as prongs 2 analysis, so just in the interest of efficiency, I'll just say, see my prong 1 analysis. And that is from the Harborside case. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because, this is prong 3, the only guiding rule on this is that a loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. Here, the loss to the applicant in not approving this variance would far outweigh any benefit to the general public. What is being proposed is the highest and best use, and it's a logical progression for the use of this. If denied, the public stands to gain nothing at large, as we are in a housing crisis, and the idea of this project is to provide for some more housing. In general, again, also as we've stated, there's a cost-benefit analysis that goes to a lot of the prongs in both the variance and the special exception criteria, in that this is going to be a very expensive project to renovate this property, and hence why you kind of need a few more units. Again, we can be being greedy, just being practical. Number 4, if the variance were granted, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished. Again, it's currently a Masonic temple that's periodically being used with large influx of cars, maybe once a week. What's intended is going to keep this area residential. We're not putting in, again, to use my joke about a Walmart with, a drive-through cannabis dispensary. We're keeping this as a residential area. We're making it safer. Sure, there might be a few more cars day to day, but there's not going to be that influx of 80 cars, once a week. So we contend that there's really no evidence that's been presented here for you today to suggest that this is going to negatively impact the surrounding area. And then, of course, unnecessary hardship. I always say this is actually a very straightforward three-step analysis. It's not as complicated as people make it out to be, in my opinion. 1, what are the special conditions of the property? 2, the fair and substantial prong, which I always like to say, another way to say that is if the variance is granted, would it unreasonably frustrate the purpose of the ordinance? And 3, is the proposed use reasonable? So, starting first with those special conditions. Currently, about 80 people come to this building when the Masonic Temple's in session about once a week. With this proposal, there's going to be fewer people, albeit present more consistently, but fewer people as opposed to that influx of those people. There is already more than enough parking that is needed on site. There's town water and sewer, so we have no concerns with respect to well or septics. And of course, this proposal would put a dent in the crisis. So the purpose of the goal of having these units be at least 800 square feet, is to ensure that you don't have units that are too small, I suppose. Here, despite the request for these smaller units, we contend it is necessary to appeal to the younger folks. Again, the folks starting out, smaller units will be an asset to the single people or the folks without kids. This is going to add much more needed diversity stock to Goffstown. And overall, we contend the relief that the applicant is asking is not going to unreasonably frustrate this purpose. It's a nice size fit. There's been testimony here already from both you all as well as us that it fits in this building, it makes sense in this building, and dare we say it's kind of necessary to make this project work. And finally, again, the use is residential. The zone allows for residential use, so the use is reasonable. Moving next to variance number 2. This speaks directly to the density. Applicant requests a variance for the proposed density of 12 units, where 2 are allowed as per the Goffstown zoning ordinance, section 4.3. I think this is a part that's been kind of beaten to the dead horse, if you will, in our special exception, but much of those arguments are relevant to this one as well. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because, again, the standard for this prong, if it's granted, will it alter the essential character of the neighborhood or negatively impact the health, welfare, and safety of the surrounding area? And again, mere conflict with the terms of the ordinance is sufficient, as all variance requests are somewhat adverse. Important to note, once again, the prong 1's in the negative, so we're not here to suggest that what we're proposing is in the public interest, just that it's not contrary to the public interest. This request is to allow for greater density than is otherwise permitted under the Goffstown zoning ordinance. All housing, especially affordable housing, even at market rate, is desperately needed throughout the state. The existing conditions of this property make it ideal for more density because currently the temple has this influx of about 80 people with their respective cars. And what's being proposed here would offer a more stabilized population that would stay in this building. You wouldn't have the influx of 80. Yes, you'd have the 12 or so folks there, at a more consistent basis, but we contend that this site, given its geographical location, given the fact that the building's already there, given the fact that you already have the large parking lot, we contend that it would fit nicely, it would not be overly burdensome against the ordinance, and it wouldn't be contrary to the public interest. Once again, prong number 2, spirit of the ordinance is observed because, same analysis as prong number 1, please see that one. Prong number 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. Here, again, for the same reasons I said last time, the loss to the applicant in not improving this variance would far outweigh any benefit to the general public. What is being proposed is the highest and best use, a logical progression for this property. If denied, the public gains nothing. This would have an opportunity here to add some more housing to your stock. And again, the loss to the applicant, again, he needs these extra units, density I should say, to make this a pragmatic project and make it work. And also to make these units, nice. Number 3, if the variance were granted, the values of surrounding properties would not be diminished. Basically, see my previous arguments. You know, what we're doing here is going to improve this property. You're not going to have the 80 people at once. You'll have a more consistent flow of people that will be comfortable, I think, with this site, given its geographical location right up against the village district. And again, you have the sidewalks, everything there. There's no evidence to suggest that the surrounding property values would be diminished. And of course, hardship. Again, what are the conditions? Fair and substantial prong, and is the use reasonable? Again, the special conditions, you got about 80 people coming to this Masonic temple when it's in session. With this proposal, there'll be fewer people, albeit a little more consistently. There's already enough parking. There's town water and sewer, and no concerns with well or septic. This would help put a dent in the housing crisis. And again, I think the biggest special condition for this property is its geographic location and the pre-existing building that's on there. It makes it a logical fit and a nice fit for that. So the fair and substantial prong, or again, as I like to say, if it's granted, will it unreasonably frustrate the purpose of the zoning ordinance? Well, the purpose of a density ordinance is to, keep the population at a reasonable level. Here, despite this request for a little bit of increase in density, we contend that it is necessary to appeal to the certain folks that we're trying to appeal to, who are struggling with the housing, that the density makes sense given its proximity to the downtown area, Cumberland Farms. The sidewalks are already in place. It's a logical progression. The property can accommodate this increased density with very little changes. And so overall, we contend that this will not frustrate the purpose of your ordinance. Is the use reasonable? Residential use, residential zone, it's allowed, so it's reasonable. All right, variance number 3. The applicant requests a variance to allow for parking in the front yard setback, which is otherwise prohibited by the Goffstown zoning ordinance, section 7.3.6. Again, folks, just so you understand, we're talking about right over here, because we have 2 frontages, right? So we have the Knoll Crest, we have a couple of parking spaces in here, and then around on this side, we have a couple of parking spaces in here. I'll give you a special condition already ahead of time. They're already there, for one. And I should say that we're also going to be doing work to the site to decrease that and actually make it more conforming, even though those spots are already in that front setback. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because, well, the standard for prongs 1 and 2, once again, alter the essential character. If it's granted, would it alter these?
You're welcome to say, I believe the textual IBID or whatever the
ID.
All
right, fine. So I've gone over with
see my
previous rule from the Harborside case. Once again, this request is to allow parking in that front yard setback where it's otherwise not permitted. Again, the parking already exists in those front yard setbacks. And what we intend to do to the area is actually reduce it. So all of this pavement's going to be gone. It's going to be turned into green space. And we're only asking for a little bit of parking on either end there in the front setback, which again is already there. There's no reason to suspect that's going to alter the essential character of the neighborhood since it's already there. And certainly from a health, welfare, and safety standpoint, again, we're going to be fixing this property up and making the parking lot more conforming to the extent that we can. But to fit those numbers of parking spaces that we have, we simply have to be in there. It is a smaller lot. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot, and we can't do anything about that. Will the spirit of the ordinance be observed? Once again, yes, see my previous argument from prong 1. Prong 3, substantial justice. Same argument as I've been saying here. A loss to the applicant is going to be greater than any gain to the public. The public stands to gain nothing by the denial except an opportunity for more housing. And again, the way this has been configured is how the applicant would need it for this to be an economically viable project. And again, a pragmatic one. Same arguments as I've been saying for the values of property. We contend that this is an improvement to this site. If anything, it might foster the values of the property, but there's certainly no evidence to suggest it's going to negatively impact. And finally, hardship. Well, the special conditions, again, that I haven't already stated here, at least for this particular variance, non-conforming pre-existing lot, and this driveway is already there with the parking already in the setback. What we're doing is we're trying to reduce it and make it more conforming, but we still need to put a little bit in that setback to meet the ordinance requirements. And of course, we have a couple extra parking spaces, which I think is probably a good thing. So to that point, unreasonably frustrating the purpose of the ordinance, otherwise a fair and substantial prong. Well, the goal for any setback ordinance is to avoid overcrowding and for life and safety. Here, despite this request to allow for an encroachment into the front setback, we contend that this is kind of a non-issue, given that the parking has already existed here as is since the 70s. And as far as we know, there's no evidence that it's necessarily caused any problems with respect to this property. Now, I don't know all the history, I don't have all the DOT reports or anything like that, but certainly in our meetings, there's been nothing to suggest that there's an issue here with those parking spaces. Now, while we might be here asking for a variance for this now, that's worthy evidence to demonstrate that I don't think it's been a problem before. And so to that point, we contend it would not overly frustrate the purpose of your zoning ordinance. And finally, residential use, reasonable, this is allowed. Next one, variance number 4. This is the loading area one, section 7.6.3. That is right here, this little rectangle. Why we need relief for that is, well, you need a loading area. You're going to have any kind of building. And your ordinance requires a loading area of 1,000 square feet and a width of 14 feet. And here our width is proposed at 8 feet. I'll just say as a general comment, I think that the zoning ordinance requirement is kind of geared to be a one-size-fits-all. That is probably contemplated for some larger buildings. What's being proposed here, 1,000 square foot loading zone is just not necessary for an apartment building of this size. We're not getting any major delivery trucks. This isn't, a big box store or something like that. It's an apartment building. It's going to be the occasional Amazon truck, UPS truck, FedEx truck, mail truck. Sure, maybe a truck somebody's moving in, moving out. Obviously, it's a good location if you have any emergency vehicles, things like that. But we think it's certainly sufficient for the size of this building and this property and for its needs. To that end, prong number 1, we don't see that it would cause any problem to the essential character of the neighborhood. It's still residential. It's still a residential use. It's not going to negatively impact the health, welfare, and safety of the people in the area, having a slightly smaller loading dock. That's pretty much all. Like I said, the property is also going to have a one-way flow and exit out the other location, so the trucks are not going to have any kind of turnaround issue. So there's no reason they can't pull right into that loading area and then march right out there on Old Crest and take a left and get themselves back over to the state highway. So again, prong 1, we don't contend it's altering the essential character of the neighborhood or causing any safety issues. Prong 2, same argument. Prong 3. Spirit of the, substantial justice, again, once again, same thing. If, the loss to the applicant's going to certainly be greater than any gain to the public if this is denied for the same reasons I've already stated. Surrounding areas, same arguments I've been making. There's no evidence to suggest that this would negatively impact the area. In fact, I think the improvements we're doing are going to enhance. Hardship, same special conditions for the most part. So again, the fair and substantial prong, or again, is it going to unreasonably frustrate the purpose of the ordinance? You have an ordinance that says you need 1,000 square feet for a loading area, to accommodate big trucks that need to pull into big locations. We contend that we don't have that here. We have an apartment building. It's going to have at least 12 folks living in it. They're not going to need much more than a few delivery trucks, occasional moving truck, and hopefully won't need emergency vehicles too often. But otherwise, the site accommodates that. And so to that point, we don't think that it's a reasonable frustration for the zoning ordinance for this ask. Once again, residential use in a residential zone, it's allowed. And finally, variance number 5, the surface water buffer. So the applicant is requesting a variance to allow work to be performed in the surface water buffer when such work is otherwise required to remain 100 feet from the surface water as per the Goffstown zoning ordinance section 13.3. So once again, just to refresh everybody's memory where that 100-foot line is, right here. Kind of hard to do anything on this lot and not be in here, no matter what we were asking for. So there's your special condition right there. But again, we also understand the importance of any kind of wetland setback, right? We get that. So we'd like to point out that, again, as already has been stated, we ran this one by your Conservation Commission. They've supported it. They've actually even gone so far as to say they hope you vote in favor of this one. Currently, the stormwater runoff from this property is discharged directly into that adjacent brook without treatment. This project will significantly enhance the level of on-site treatment for that stormwater through a new installation of a new stormwater best management practice. Again, Conservation Commission has voted in favor, and they cited to what we pitched to them, which was treatment of some water for the runoff, minimizing untreated drainage into Whittle Brook, and the reduction of the total impervious area has been their highlights for this. So again, prong one, essential character of the neighborhood's not being changed by granting this variance. It's not going to negatively impact the health, welfare, and safety. In fact, it's going to help it, foster it. So same argument for prong number two. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, as I've said, the loss of the applicant is going to greatly outweigh any gain to the public for reasons I've already stated. And once again, there's no evidence to suggest that the surrounding property's values would be negatively impacted by this request. In fact, once again, I think this is something that's going to help it. This is going to help the area quite immensely. And so again, hardship. Well, again, as I said, the special conditions is the pre-existing non-conforming nature of this lot as it is. And you've seen where that 100-foot line is. We can absolutely do not do anything in this lot without bumping into that. That said, the fair and substantial prong, does this unreasonably frustrate the purpose of your ordinance? Well, I would say no, because we're not going to be in the wetland. We'll just be in the buffer, doing work, and that work is going to improve the wetland. So I'd say we're going to be doing quite the opposite. We're actually going to be helping the situation. And again, is the proposed use reasonable? As I've stated, it's reasonable. It's a residential use, residential zone. It's reasonable. That's all.
Take a breath.
All right.
Take a breath, yeah, you did.
I think you just like saying prongs.
Yeah.
It's such a legal term.
I have to make sure it gets on the record, it's mapped out. So. Happy to answer any questions. I have the engineer, I have the owner with me.
Well,
I have a question.
Jason, go.
The special exception that we voted for before, was that for the number of apartments that we did? Because the special exception was just supposed to be for multifamily in the R1, not the number of units. That's the variance.
I think that's a fair characterization, but we kind of beat that one up. during
Yeah,
the
well, I
special
just
exception
noticed
as well,
it while I was double
I think technically from a procedural standpoint, the special exception was to allow the multifamily, and then yes, the variance is to ask for the 12.
Yeah, we got rather deep into the
But
weeds.
we got deep into the weeds
Yeah.
on that, so I mean, I
That's
might
what
mention
I
to say
think
you guys have
problems with
discussed
that.
it, and we've heard the public
Yeah.
input and all that, but, if you have anything more.
I just wanted to point that out to the chair that I noticed that.
All right. Bruce, anything from you?
No, I think it was a good presentation. Would it be premature to make a motion? I would do them
We
separately.
haven't done.
Yeah, that would be, I believe we should probably vote on each one as we go along. So if you would like to make the motion.
Hang on, we
go.
gotta do public comment.
I'm gonna start at the bottom, because I think some of
All right,
the easier
wait.
ones we'll start with.
Wait a minute, as Jason points out, we've not yet closed the public hearing.
Right, I think
It's
that
late and
folks-
I'm getting ahead of
Yeah,
myself,
yeah,
and
I
I
know.
want to give the public a chance to comment. So, Mr. Hill, please come up. I'm presuming you want to come out, sir.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith.
Sorry, it's been a
That's right, my
long,
first name
it's
is
been a
Hugh.
long night already.
My first name is Hugh, my last name is Smith, and I'm not gonna keep you guys long. I just have one, from what I understand, he went through all of the variances and explained everything, so I'm not quite sure which one you want me to address, but the first variance was for the relief of the minimum of the size of the lot, and then we took it out of order because you went with
Well,
the
the
numbers.
first one was for the special exception to allow multifamily in the R1 zone. That was the matter we
Correct.
talked to death, voted on, and so now we're going through the first, as you've got your agenda there, it goes through the list of,
Right, and he went through all of them, so the one that, what I'm asking for a question is, can we do something to restrict the number of occupants per unit? You're talking about 400 feet or 500 feet, there's 5 units, 400 something feet, there's 5 units, 500 something feet, and you get 2 600 something feet. And you had mentioned something about starter homes, starter apartments for people starting out, single people starting out. Can we restrict the number of occupants due to the size to be 1 person per unit?
Yes, you can.
I believe you can.
are we sure about that?
I'm sure.
I mean, it's
of
bad enough I got a 12-unit apartment complex next to me. Now can I stop to 12 people living there instead of 24 or 36? So I request that we put some sort of restriction on that, 1 person per apartment, or if it's a 600 square foot apartments, to be fair to the developer, then it's 2 people in the 2 600 ones, but the 400 and 500 square feet get 1 occupant.
So, I was, actually wrote down a question that I was going to ask the owner, was whether they would be amenable to having, because after listening to him, I don't think that that would be a problem for him. My concern on the zoning board front would be, he sells it to somebody else and now, oh, this is here, we can allow as many people as we want. So we can put a restriction on, in New Hampshire, most municipalities can restrict the number of occupants in an apartment or dwelling unit.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Bruce, go ahead.
I think that's a tricky line to go with for a couple of reasons. One is going to be for code enforcement. That's tough for the zoning officer to police that. And I'm not sure legally how you could restrict somebody's use. I mean, what happens if it's 1 person and he had his girlfriend over for, and then now there's 2 occupants, but it's still a 1-bedroom apartment. Number of occupants, I think, is going to be tough.
I wasn't going to go that far, but.
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Police can specify 1 person, or at least can specify a companion or somebody can stay 2 nights a week, no more than 6 times in 30 days or whatever. Often that's common in a lease. But a lease can specify the number of occupants.
But again, a lease is a transaction between the landlord and the person who is leasing the property.
Correct, but he's buying this to rent. He's building this to rent. He's not doing it to sell condos.
I understand that, and I would think that is one of those things, and I always try to tell people, if there's things like that, I recommend the 2 of you getting together and seeing if you can come to a meeting of the minds, because I don't think specifying lease terms is something that should be within the board's purview.
But the variance can be granted based on the number of occupants, so that automatically from this point on, there's 1 occupant in the 400, 1 occupant in the 500, or 2 occupants in the 600. You can do that as part of your variance. And that protects us all. In other words, we've already given it to the developer side. How about a little bit to the abutter side? Let's be fair. Let's restrict the number of occupants. We don't want 12 units with 3 people in each unit.
I'd just like to ask the owner if he would care, or if he has any concerns about that. And then when we go into when we close the public.
Do you want me to step aside so he can speak and
Yeah, I
then
think
come
the
back
owner
up?
would like to comment on this. I think it might be agreeable to all. of you.
Again, if you're willing to
Do you want me to
step
stay
aside,
or sit?
let the owner come up and you wish to respond. Again, this is what we like to encourage dialogue in these kind of things rather than having people butting heads on it.
Yeah, so I like what he's saying. I don't want 4 or 5 people in these places. I would immediately move to evict them. You know, if they were over, in my lease, I do state how many, and if there's more, they have to pay more if I feel the space can substantiate more people. But in a 1 bedroom in this size, you can have 1 and a guest, 1, 2. If it's a couple, like saying a boyfriend and a girlfriend, okay, well now they're together, they're living together, and maybe they can't even in a 400 square foot apartment. They're gonna be at each other's throats, I would think. I mean, I don't know. But, or, you know, there could be a mother or father that has their child every other weekend. And so now there's a second person there part-time. So there's definitely scenarios that, you know, I can't put a camera in every apartment and count people, you know, that's not possible, it's not like a thing. So I can agree, and I'm happy to agree to say, hey, we don't want, you know, I wouldn't allow more than 2 people per apartment. That would be I would be very firm on that. It would be in my lease. There is no fee for an extra person, they're not a thing. It's just, they're not big enough, in my opinion, to allow more than 2 people per apartment.
Okay, if you're being, again, this is.
And again, that's between him and I, we could have, I don't mind having a separate agreement that's outside of this with him. I mean, if it can be here, fine, I don't know if it's within the purview.
That's why I'm trying to avoid, I don't think it's something that should be set in this kind of
Yeah.
Oh, I
forum.
do. I do. I disagree with you there.
But if you'd be amenable to that, if we were to condition it on a maximum of 2 occupants per apartment, you
I have
know,
no
that
problem
would
with
be,
that.
that would be something I think would be possibly
Yeah.
a reasonable compromise, so.
Well, if I may, I mean, you just heard the owner here, we're agreeable to that restriction, if it helps, and if it helps calm the abutters' concerns,
Then we can
we're
have it
certainly
done.
willing to have that in writing. Recognizing the code enforcement, that's probably gonna be kind of a pain to enforce, but at least it's a
Well,
hook.
When you,
Right.
when
We
you see,
can
when you see
talk.
Jack doing this,
You
yeah.
know, and I'm sympathetic to that as a town attorney. But I will say that at least it does give you a hook, and it gives the abutter a hook. You know, if he sees 4 people cramming into an apartment, it gives him a reason to like call code enforcement, and then, you know, they can rattle our guy's chain on that. But that helps, we're agreeable to that restriction.
One thing we discussed just quietly while he was bringing that up was, do you say, you know, well, I guess 2, you know, 24 per building, or 2 per, however you guys word it, it's fine, but
All right,
my lease will be very clear that there is no more than 2 people.
all right, very good. Mr. Smith, come on back up. You have
Okay.
more to say.
Well, yeah, the only thing I'm saying is that he seems to be a gentleman, and I believe him to be a man of his word. But he could sell it, God forbid he gets divorced or something happened to him, and it goes to another person as an owner. So as a result, if you approve it as the variance with no more than 2 people per apartment, okay, then at least it gives us something in writing that no matter what the chain of command is later, we're all getting older, eventually somebody sells, right, then I'm protected.
And
Same runs with the land, so it.
There you go.
And
There you go.
I understand that, and I think, you know, again, everybody seems to be on the same page, and we'd certainly be, I'd certainly be amenable
So it goes
to
in the
adding that.
variance, not just in his lease, and as a result, it isn't up to the, really, for a minute, it isn't really something to be tossed on the code enforcement officer's problem, because the landlord is gonna police it himself. If he's got a problem, he's gonna deal with it.
Yep.
Right, I'm not gonna have any way to know how many people are living in one apartment, they go in and out the building, who knows what room they're in, right? So, can we put in the variance, it's approved, but no more than 2 people per unit?
I would be amenable to that, as everybody seems to be agreeable here. All right, anything further? Or is-
Thank you.
All right, very good, so shall we, anything further from the other person in the public gallery?
I think we've said enough tonight. We thank the honorable board for their time and deliberate.
All right,
Here, if you have any questions.
All right. let's close the public hearing and deliberate. Anyone have anything to say or any motions they would like to make?
The only other
Yes,
thing,
Mr. Chair, this is Bruce.
Yep,
As I said, there's a couple very easy ones I'd like to go through them, but I'm going to reverse the order somewhat. I'd like to address the number 5 variance about the disturbance in the wetlands. And as a personal comment, this is really planning board, shouldn't be a zoning ordinance, but make a motion to approve the variance was that item number 5 for section 13.3, based on the fact that we got favorable recommendation from the Conservation Commission. And I do think that the property and the zoning ordinance creates the hardship. I suspect the wetland buffers and setbacks were established after the building and the previous site was developed. And I think that the proposed work will remediate existing conditions and will make the development very much compliant. So I would make a motion that we approve that variance, number 5, section 13.3.
I'll second.
seconded by John. Any further discussion? All right, I'll start the roll call with you, Bruce. Go ahead.
I'm in favor for the reasons I stated previously.
I'm in favor.
John?
I'm in favor.
I vote yes. Okay, number 5 is granted.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the 4th variance request, and that is for the reduced loading area size. Specifically, let me get that article number. It's section 7.6.3, the reduction from 1,000 square feet in the width of 14 to a width that's proposed at 8 feet. And again, I think it's the issue of the zoning ordinance. This is really a site plan criteria, but it's in the zoning ordinance, and it's for a function for residential, not a large industrial or commercial use. I would make the motion that we grant that.
Second, somebody?
Second.
Seconded by John. Any further discussion? Start the roll call with you again, Bruce.
To approve.
John?
Approve.
Jason?
Approve.
And I vote to approve. 4th one is granted. Keep going, Bruce, you're on a roll.
I gotta find my place. Okay, yes, and so again, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve their variance request number 3 to section 7.3.6 to allow parking in the front yard setback. Again, this is a reconfiguration of an existing non-conforming situation, and the new configuration, in my mind, is really a site plan configuration, but it's a requirement in the zoning ordinance, but it's satisfying the parking requirements by number, and it's not a variance for that, it's the location that I think it fits the property, and it's a well-intended variance. I would make a motion to grant.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? Okay, start the roll call with you again, Bruce.
I would vote to grant.
John?
In favor.
Jason?
Approve.
I vote to approve. Variance granted. Next one.
Okay, this is my difficult one, but I guess I'm just to make for discussion purposes, make a motion to approve the second variance request. That's to allow 12 dwelling units, whereas 2 is allowed by zoning ordinance. I believe it's section 4.3, but hold on, let me,
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, 4.3. Let's for discussion, I'd like to, I would also entertain amendments to that.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Jason.
So I'm going to go in to discuss this one. We're in this little weird pickle because there was allowed by special exception, but the table doesn't permit it. So now we're here to ask for relief out of the table that's rigid, saying the calculation based on the size of the lot only allows you 2. I'd like to have 12. That's, unfortunately, that's the request for the variance, and that's where I have a hard, it's a big leap from 2 to 12, but we went back to that whole definition of, not really a substantial, what was that definition of the
So,
R1 zone definition?
hey Bruce? This is Jason. Hey, I'm gonna withdraw my second, but would you put an amendable adjustment to your motion to add a restriction of no more than 2 unrelated adults in any one unit as a restriction by granting that 2 to 12?
I'd say no more related or unrelated. I mean,
2
we should have
adults,
just no more than
period.
2.
Well, I wanna just make sure like two adults and a child would be fine. You know, I don't wanna be so restrictive as to not allow a family that has 2 adults and a child to have that situation. 3 adult people, no. But that, I mean, we could say no more than 2 adults in the unit.
Per unit, I think.
Would that work for you?
I get hung up for the poor code enforcement officer to have to enforce, especially when it gets down to are you related or not related.
We can't ask.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's in the purview of this board to deal with the code enforcement officer. That sounds like an HR issue. Sorry, Jack.
Yeah, that'll be a 595B.
So would that work for you, Bruce? Two adults?
I don't know if I'd go that far. I'd say just 2 occupants. I just get hesitant to really being that restrictive. I think.
I would lean toward what Bruce is saying, keep the language as general as possible, just say 2 occupants per unit. Again,
Yeah.
the owner's indicated he's amenable to that, so.
Yeah, I like that too.
And I think that it carries forward for the next owner as well.
Yeah, it does.
It's part of the ZBA approval, but it's not so rigid that it's ridiculously hard to enforce. But it does go forward on the zoning variance that runs with the land now forever.
Yeah, and that I think was what we were talking about, the point is that we want it to run with the property so that it binds future owners of it as well, so. Yeah, I would support what Jason is suggesting. 2 occupants?
So I will reword that to approve the variance requested, the variance number 2, specifically section 4.3, with the condition that each unit has no more than 2 occupants.
To allow for 12 units with no more than 2 occupants per unit.
There we go. Yes, thank you for that clarification. Correct.
I'll second.
All right, made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, start the roll call, Bruce. Go ahead.
Approve.
John,
Approve.
Jason,
Approve.
and I approve. Granted, the variance is granted. Last one. But board members don't.
I'll make a motion. Unless you want to, Bruce. If you really want to,
I'll pass.
I will make the motion granting to grant the variance from section 4.3.2 of the Goffstown zoning board or Goffstown zoning ordinance, limiting the minimum size of a dwelling unit to 800 square feet, with the reasons called out in the variance request, as written in the variance
I will second that.
request. Good.
Seconded by John. Discussion. Bruce, hearing nothing from you, I will call for a vote. Go ahead and start the roll call.
Bruce to approve.
John to approve.
Jason, approve?
John approve. Variance granted. And does that do it? I think it does. God, it's been a long evening.
We still have some things.
We have, yeah, board members don't think you're getting away. We have other items to deal with on the agenda that Thank you very much for your patience, gentlemen. You know the man to talk to here.
Hey, Bruce, let the record note that Denise unwillingly came back to the table.
Unwillingly.
Came back to the table.
What, we got more?
Yeah, we have a few
Yeah,
items. We have a few items of correspondence here to deal with. And pile up my papers here.
Oh, yes, I had a comment about this. I don't know if we talked about this yet. Do we talk about this yet?
Open Space Committee, which was the first item on the correspondence stuff.
To the open space. No, sorry, that was not what I had to comment on.
Okay, well, if you have comments, go ahead before we dive into the other.
I only wanted to say on the third one, I'm somewhat loath to nominate anybody to the board that I have not talked to.
Oh, that's not gonna happen.
Oh, okay.
That's not going to
Okay,
happen.
So we'll, yeah, it's,
It's not going to
we
happen.
already talked about that.
All right, let me go down the list. Let me start by, I'd like to nominate Bruce as the ZBA's representative to the Open Space Committee that was formed by the Planning Committee to redraft the town's open space ordinance in time to be voted on in the March 2025 town vote, Bruce is
Definitely.
our best hope in that.
I'll third it.
It sounds like he's nodding his head vigorously.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Yes.
Bruce, you're not here, so we elect you.
Yeah, I already softened him up on this, so.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Bruce, the ball is in your court.
I'm gonna abstain because I'm not gonna vote for myself, but
But
I did volunteer when they had the public hearing on the zoning amendments, and they asked for some volunteers as well.
Okay, so we know it's willing and not unwilling.
All right, yeah.
All right, second item we already covered during the hearing. It was the
Okay.
Conservation Commission's recommendation on the lot there where they were volubly in favor of it
Yes.
because of the drainage and other improvements it was going to make. The third item here is just an informational one. We received an application from Christopher Leach, who's interested in serving as an alternate. He actually sought me out. I've talked to him a couple of times for probably a total of an hour. He wanted to know what the workload was like, how much prep, etc. So he's thoughtful and serious about it. He'll be in at the March meeting, and we can talk to him at the March meeting and hopefully get him appointed as an alternate. And as a convenience to everybody on the board, we have appointment papers for him here. If you'd like to sign them in advance, so that when we appoint him, you don't have to run to town hall and genuflect at Kathy Ball's office in order to, well, thank Kathy Ball for this. She got these all prepared. We can sign
So
them,
wait,
they'll
I
be
didn't-
ready, and when he's
So-
I didn't
appointed.
have to run there and do this?
Right, I know. And I think Jason and I are both in agreement that we would never nominate someone without interviewing them. But what this is doing is saving,
Yeah,
it's not final when we put our name, it's,
yeah, it's providing
Still has to
that
be
he is
notarized.
voted in
Okay.
by, that he is voted in by the board at
Mhm.
the March meeting, so.
I know Mr. Leach, his son plays football with my son. I've known him for a few years, very good man.
Chris-
Did you recruit him?
Chris,
No, I didn't.
Chris Leach,
yes.
young guy, probably 40-ish.
Yes, he lives in
Wait.
Bernardville, yes.
Does that mean when he hears cases, you're gonna have to recuse yourself? No.
I hope so.
So, yeah, and as I say, I know him a little bit through town politics.
Got a beard. Yeah.
So, you know, again, hopefully he'll work out, it'll
Yeah.
look great, it will have an
He's
alternate.
motivated. He's a good.
We also,
we're hoping to have 2 alternates after
Yeah,
the
hope-
election.
You know, we have 3 people running for 2 spots for the 3-year term, and I would think.
Bruce is taking Judy's spot, so he's already, I thought we already voted Bruce in.
We did.
We did, okay.
We did, he's an alternate tonight because he couldn't get in and sign, he
There you
couldn't get in
go.
and
Okay.
take the
That's
oath
what's
with
going on.
Kathy Ball before.
Okay.
He's visiting his first granddaughter in Detroit, is it, Bruce?
Well, it's outside, it's actually Monroe.
Anyway, but, you know, we'll have, everybody will be elected, and presumably, if we have the person who does not prevail in the election is interested, we can sort of solicit them for, boy, 2 alternates, talk about a wealth of things.
Don't think we're giving up, we're gonna just keep on asking for more.
And I'm trying to think if there was, I don't believe there was anything else. If there is, I have forgotten it, so.
I motion to leave.
Motion to go home.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Bruce?
Bruce.
Bye, Bruce. Thank you.
Bye, Bruce.
Thank you.